announced a hiring freeze. Today's announcement comes in the wake of the Trump administration pulling $400 million of federal funding from Columbia University. In a message to faculty and staff, Harvard President Alan Garber says they need to prepare for a wide range of financial circumstances, and in doing so, the hiring freeze is effective immediately. Garber adds that the freeze applies to all of Harvard's schools and divisions. The Trump administration says the funding cuts at Columbia are punishment for what's described as the school's failure to protect Jewish students from anti-Semitism and harassment. And the second round of the largest layoffs in Mass General Brigham's history are underway. Globe reports that the second round began today. It's a move aimed at saving the state's largest healthcare system more than $200 million. Layoffs, which started in February, are within the hospital system. Spokespeople say many jobs have been merged into fewer positions while other vacant positions sit unfilled. In a letter to employees this morning, Mass General Brigham CEO Ann Klebinski said that all notifications to people being laid off would occur this week. In sports, the Celtics host the Jazz at the Garden tonight. The Red Sox have a rare day off today. Sunny mid to upper 50s today, clear upper 30s overnight, then sunny and low 60s tomorrow. Sun clouds back into the 40s on Wednesday. We're at 49 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from the Lemelson Foundation, dedicated to improving lives through invention, innovation, and climate action. And the William T. Grant Foundation, supporting research to improve the lives of young people at WTGrantFDN.org.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We will be at the Boston Public Library tomorrow, Tuesday, and we're going to be joined by Michelle Wu, Ask the Mayor, her session from 11 to 12. On Wednesday, we're going to be joined by the governor and the manager of the MBTA, Phil Eng. We can't wait to ask him questions. That's going to be doubleheader on Wednesday. We'll be back not on Friday because the library is closed.
Is that it?
Hi.
Oh, you're supposed to say hi. You do
Hi.
that every day. By the way, just an announcement here. Tariff thing is going really well, and we're going to keep checking. If your retirement fund is gone by 2 o'clock, we will announce it on the air. So if you stay tuned, we'll let you know.
I know.
Okay. So yesterday marked our annual Spring Forward charade. We moved the clocks forward an hour, and then in 6 months, we moved the clocks back an hour. But here's the thing. If you're even still listening to my voice, Marjorie, I don't want to go back. I want more sun all the time, like last night, and permanent daylight saving time would do the trick. If you haven't caught on yet, the lines are open for a twice-annual daylight saving, no S, by the way, daylight saving time discussion backed by popular demand, despite what Marjorie says. Our number is 877-301-8970. Permanent daylight saving time, or switching to Atlantic time, even though I'm not quite sure what that means, or getting rid of daylight saving time permanently is the other alternative. There's so many options, probably because time zones are a human construct anyway. So give us a call and tell us how you want government to regulate how much sun you have and when you have it. 877-301-8970 is the number. Now, nobody knows what Marjorie's position is, I should say. She changes it all the time.
Yeah.
Some years she decides, because she wants to aggravate me, she is against permanent daylight saving time, even though she loves the extra sun at the end of the day. And sometimes she's in favor of it for reasons that are not quite clear. So where are you this year, Marjorie?
And Marjorie's just sick and tired of talking about this.
Okay, then why don't you support it? Then maybe we'll get it, and that'll be the end of it.
I've come over, Jim. I've yelled, Uncle, I'm giving up.
You're on my side now?
Whatever time you want to start the day, find me. So don't have to talk about this anymore. Somebody just texted, we should ask Pressley and Lynch about this.
Yeah.
They have some power on daylight saving time.
Well, I mean, as people probably know, a state can opt out of daylight saving time. Like, I think, is it Hawaii and Arizona? A couple of states have opted out. You can't make it permanent without approval of the federal government. So remember we had that BS commission out of the legislature a few years ago that sort of equivocated kind of thing. And
it's closer. It's closer, Jim.
What do you mean? Well, no.
Your side is closer.
Well, I don't know. Actually, that's not true. In
think
fact,
so?
there was a poll that came out the other day. There used to be close to 70% support a couple of decades ago for year-round daylight saving time. It has dropped precipitously.
It has?
You know why?
Is that because of Donald Trump?
People are dopes. That's what I mean. How can you not? You know what time the sun set yesterday? Thank you.
It was nice. Like
6:40
yeah, it was
something.
Nice. It was nice.
How could you not like that? I don't understand it at all. And some people complain because it's true. It's darker a little later in the morning. We'll talk about that. I'm sure people complain about that too. But the energy production in an individual human body, the joy that is produced when you have that extra sunlight at the end of the day. I know you feel the same way despite your protestations. Yeah. To the contrary, are absolutely wonderful. And by the way, one of my heroes, you know who the sponsor, other than Ed Markey, who's been a brilliant leader on this thing. You're the chief sponsor on the other side of the aisle, and the Senate has been for years the Sunshine Protection Act. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, slide down on the couch, Marco Rubio.
He's the one that had a little temper tantrum apparently last week involving Elon Musk.
How much do you love that, by the way? And obviously, he's the one that leaked that to the newspaper, or wouldn't have been in the New York Times, right?
I wouldn't want to be Marco Rubio.
Yeah,
boy, talk about a tortured life.
In any case, 877-301-8970. We're asking you if you would like to make daylight saving time permanent. It just started yesterday. And let me just say one thing that there's a total misconception about. You know how they talk about how people are groggier today, which is true because they lost an hour of sleep potentially, maybe. The thing, there are more accidents, there are more mistakes at work, etc. That is not because of the switch to daylight saving time. It's because of the switch at all. We should just make up our mind and not be changing the clocks twice a year. Do you at least agree with that?
Listen to this from Sam from Fairhaven.
What do you say?
Jim, before you chastise anyone who mistakenly refers to it as daylight savings time, you might check out the following on our website, November 5th, 2021. That's a while ago. But apparently the archive is titled Jim Browdy versus Daylight Savings Time. LOL, says Sam from Fairhaven.
Well, Sam, Marjorie wrote that, so it's not that surprising to anybody, so get over it. 877-301-8970. Now, are you good? Can we get this argument out of the way, this whole thing about it's too dark in the morning? Do you care that it's dark in the morning? Really?
I kind of like it being dark in the morning.
Exactly. So you're on my side.
Makes me feel efficient because I'm getting up before the sunrise.
Yeah,
Makes me feel like I've got to jump in the day. You know what I mean?
Not really. No, I don't.
Certain lilt in my step.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, good. 877-301-8970. Let's get this baby going here. Mary and Rentham. Okay, Mary, you got to wait. Marjorie's having a good time.
We have this segment now called One More Thing or Two More Things.
Two More Things.
As the texter says, shouldn't this be a one more thing? Or how about a one less thing?
Yeah, I am telling you, I don't care what the polls are showing. I think people are with me. They want to not change, and they prefer the light at the end of the day. Well, stop with the okay. I mean, you're with me. That's the absurd part.
I'm beaten down. I just.
Marjorie, let's ask a question before we get Mary from Rentham as our first caller. How many months in a row did you berate Governor Deval Patrick about the fact that we were the only state in the country that had, what were those things called? Flaggers,
yes.
as opposed to...
we don't have flaggers.
No, we didn't have flaggers.
Cops on details.
Cops on detail.
That's right. Everybody else has flaggers. 49
How many months in a row did you
states.
do that? Would you say 15?
Well, that was a big source of upset.
Well, this is a big source, too, of upset to a lot of people.
Big source of upset to you, Jim. Mary and Rentham.
Hello, Mary and Rentham.
Let's hear what you have to say.
Don't ruin the mood, Mary. Hi.
Jim, Marjorie, make it stop.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Listen, I have to change the clock on my microwave,
me too.
oven range, and my car every 6 months. And I always forget it.
Yeah.
And then I have to go crazy pulling my hair out. It stopped.
Now, Mary, so that you don't have to change it in your car anymore, which would you like it to be year-round? Daylight saving time when it's lighter at night, or the other stupid?
What we got right now. No, what we got right now.
Exactly.
Because when I'm driving and those headlights, those high-intensity headlights.
I know exactly what you mean.
Everybody. So that allows me to have more life and activity in the evening. So, keep it the way it is now. That's it. Endure the pain of going forward an hour, and that's it. Make it stop.
Mary, that was one of the smartest calls we've ever had.
Call.
Here's Mark in Gloucester.
That's right.
I'm with Marjorie. Whatever side she's on this year, that's the side I support.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. That's a very wise position. 877-301-8970. 89, 70. You know, I wrote a brilliant piece in the Globe magazine
no
a couple of years ago.
Over it. Never seen anything
I don't think
like
they
it.
have. And you know who actually was in favor of year-round daylight saving
Who?
time? Then Attorney General, now Governor of the Commonwealth, should be with us Wednesday at 11 o'clock. That would be Maura Healey.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
What do you think of that?
You got the power girls on your side.
Okay,
Jim.
so just like Marjorie, Donald Trump has changed his position, not quite as often as he changed his position on tariffs. Late last year, I don't know what his position was on daylight saving time. I think he was in favor of it. He's since gone back on that. Here he is speaking to the press last Thursday on this topic from the Oval Office. Here's Trump.
I assume people would like to have more light later, but some people want to have more light earlier because they don't want to take their kids to school in the dark. And it's a little bit one way, but it's very much a 50-50 issue. And it's something I can do, but a lot of people like it one way, a lot of people like it the other way. It's very even. And usually I find when that's the case, what else do we have to do?
What? I mean, what was that? What is he saying?
It's very
there?
even, and what else do we have to do?
Can I tell you something? I want to get this in, too, before we go to the next call. This whole thing about kids going to school in the dark. Do you remember in my excellent op-ed in the magazine?
Little miners' hats.
Little miners' hats. That's one possibility. Glenn Kuchar, head of the Mass Association of School Committees, I called him before I wrote my piece. He supports this. You know why?
Because kids go to school too early.
Because it will add momentum to their effort to get school starting time later in the day.
Especially for older kids.
Exactly.
At middle school and high school. Listen to this one. This is a texter. No. I'd like it to be as dark as possible so I can sleep through the next 4 years.
Scott in Brookline, you're next.
Could be 8 years. You know, we're hearing that now.
At least.
Could be 8 years.
Scott in Brookline, you're next. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I just heard what Trump said, and I don't know why this is the one thing he cares about the American people having consensus on. If it's that bad, just split the difference. Let's go back half an hour and leave it. I mean, this whole construct is so ridiculous when it's ignored by Hawaii, part of Arizona. I mean, it's just this is one thing Congress could do that everybody could get behind, but they can't even get this done. I don't understand.
Well, isn't there, Jim? You're the expert on this.
Don't
isn't
ask me
there
about
a
Atlantic
half-hour
Standard.
proposal?
Don't
I think
ask me.
some people do talk
Scott
about
has
this.
it
Scott,
right here.
Depending on geographically where you're located, if you're way far to the east or way far to the west, obviously it's different.
It shouldn't. Well, obviously it's a time zone kind of thing.
Well, the sunrise
but putting aside the
different.
time zone, Scott's saying just split the difference to a half-hour thing everywhere and don't change the clocks anymore. Scott, brilliant phone call from you as well. Thank you very much for doing that.
Many people are with this.
Let me tell you something. If I could do it, I'd spring ahead 3 hours. The notion that you could be, how great, when it comes to June, is it June? When it comes to, and it's like light at 9 o'clock, is that like exaltation
and you know, if
or
you
what?
Go, I remember when I was in college going to Great Britain, and it was daylight there in June to like 11 o'clock at night. It was really wild. What are you laughing at, the text?
This is Cliff in Winchester, probably Marjorie, our staff says. When is this segment over? I'll come back then.
On the other hand, somebody up above that says, daylight saving conversation. I look forward to this conversation because this one time Trump isn't part of the first segment of the show. Don't care about daylight saving time one way or the other.
Well, exactly. So we just played Donald Trump. Who I guess he would have to sign. Well, I really don't care how this happens. The issue is we need momentum behind the pro-daylight saving time year-round kind of thing.
Here's Kirsten in Canton. Thank you for calling, Kirsten.
Hey, Kirsten in Canton.
Hi.
Hi.
So I think I have the solution. Well, first of all, I don't mind changing the clocks at all. I love that extra hour sleep in the fall, and I really love the extra light in the spring and whatever. But if we were to go to daylight saving time all the time, I wouldn't mind it, but in New England, so I have the solution for the eastern part of the country.
Yeah,
so the eastern time zone, right, is so big that the problem is that if we went to daylight saving time all the time, then the western part of the eastern time zone, the sun wouldn't be rising until like 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning or something. So what we need to do, New England needs to go to the Atlantic time zone. Because,
which is like what, Nova Scotia and places like that?
Because we're on the eastern part, yeah. Puerto Rico, Nova Scotia. Okay. I forget what the other place is.
Keep going there, Kirsten. You're doing very well. Good.
Right. So it's like, I think it's an hour. So it would be an hour later. So New England would be like the now daylight saving time. all the time, right? And then the western part of the Eastern time zone wouldn't have to deal with like the sun, like they would say the same.
What is the western
Anyway,
part of the
that's my
Eastern
solution.
time zone? Who's in the western part of the?
I don't.
Like Buffalo, New
I
York,
know,
or
like,
Who cares about Buffalo? I mean, really?
Pennsylvania?
I don't care. I frankly don't care.
That's where you're from, Jim.
Well, Jamie says Indiana. Does anybody listen to the show care about what
Indiana.
happens in Indiana? I
They're
mean, come
on
on.
the Eastern
Right, like
time
Western
zone in
Pennsylvania.
Indiana.
West, I don't care about Western
Yeah.
Pennsylvania either. I like Pittsburgh, but I'm not that into Western. Hey,
Okay.
Kirsten, that's actually a common sense kind of solution. Thank you very
Well,
much.
that gets
for
into the
proposing it.
geography and the size of these time zones.
Did you take geography at Stanford? Probably you did.
No, but my kids had this great teacher at the Runkle School in Brookline who had them make maps of every section of the world. They started with North America, then they went to South America, then they went to Asia, and it was the most brilliant thing because they really know geography.
Do you remember one of
I
the greatest
don't know
moments
where
in
Indiana
NPR?
is. I'm
Neither
not
do I.
sure.
No
Okay,
one
but they're
cares
showing
where it
us
is.
now where Indiana
We don't
is.
care where it is.
It's somewhere out there.
Do you
west of
remember
us.
when Mary Louise Kelly was with the Secretary of what was he? The Secretary of Pompeo, and he asked her where Afghanistan was. I mean,
right.
talk about demeaning, and she nailed it. Was that one of the great kind of things?
He got on a map.
And then he said, didn't they take her aside and said, "You said we weren't going to talk about it. We said this kind of." She really,
By the
was
way,
fabulous.
that teacher's name was Mr. Kelly. He was a great
was?
teacher. Oh, he was a great
The Runkle
teacher.
School?
The Runkle School, that's right.
Do you know anything about
And his
geography?
kids
Oh, you
went
know
on-
where Indiana is.
He had two kids that went on Jeopardy, and they were like champions for weeks and weeks.
Look at this. Indiana,
It's ridiculous.
Michigan, Eastern Kentucky, the eastern tip of Tennessee, Georgia, all in the Eastern time zone. Is that incredible?
That's right.
What is that? What
They're
conclusion
suffering.
do we
They're
reach about
suffering
that?
in Indiana, Jim.
They are?
Yes, they are. Let's go to Jane in Concord. Hi, Jane.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Yeah.
Frequent caller,
Love
almost constant listener.
Thank you. Yeah. What do you think about this?
Well, I am tired of hearing this thing about kids going to school
So
in the
am I.
dark in the morning, because
am I.
most kids otherwise come home in the dark.
Good
so
point.
they have after-school activities, or if they don't, they probably should.
Excellent
or
point.
school should go later.
Yep.
So that argument just doesn't hold.
Nope.
And the other thing is, I think there's places in the world where they might have half-hour time zone changes,
do?
but I don't know where they are.
Well, can you look it up and
maybe
call
in
us back,
Asia?
Jane? What's that?
Okay.
Okay. I mean, Jane, thank you. Thank you for the call. What are you laughing about?
Here's this texter. Boston Public Radio moldy chestnut pledge drive idea. Let listeners vote with their dollars on whether we need here one more segment on daylight saving time. I'll renew my membership for a chance to take next fall off. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. I love that one.
We have to take a break.
We have to take a break. We're
Oh,
talking.
look at this. Jamie says North Korea, that's a great role model, has a half-hour time zone difference from South Korea. What do you think of that?
I think that's very, very forward-looking by
Can I
Kim
ask you a
Jong-un.
question? Is
What?
Indiana in the same time zone as North Korea? Do you know if... Were you shocked that Indiana is not in Central?
Yeah, I thought it was in Central.
What do you think? What's that about?
And then where does Pacific time zone start?
Where does that start?
Yeah.
Western of Indiana. I don't know. Who
Okay.
decides this, by the way? Do
Because
the
we only
individual
have three
states
when you
decide
think
this?
about it. Right now in California,
There's
it's
Mountain, too.
It's 8:22 in California.
It is, yeah.
So we only have 3 time zones.
I thought we had 4.
We should have more
How
than
many
that.
we have?
You know why?
What?
We're a big country, Jim.
We are big. That's a very good.
We need-
And when we add Canada, that's going to change
That's right.
everything.
That's right. Okay. We're going to keep talking about this for a while because I didn't take today off and I should have.
No, you
Time for a
shouldn't.
quick
This is
break.
good. This
You're
is
listening
really
to
good.
Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
When Donald Trump announced new tariffs on goods from Mexico, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum acted quickly to stop most of them from taking effect.
Tuvimos una excelente y respetuosa llamada.
We had an excellent and respectful call, she said, and our work has yielded unprecedented results. That story next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Boston Ballet, presenting Swan Lake. This timeless love story features thrilling dancing, masterful music, and breathtaking sets. On stage now through March 16th. Official tickets at bostonballet.org. And Revision Energy, a solar company and a Mitsubishi Electric heating and air conditioning contractor, offering customers the option to combine a solar array with a heat pump system to manage their heating and cooling at home. RevisionEnergy.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow. Mayor Wu joins us from 11 to 12 for Ask the Mayor. We're at the library on Wednesday as well. The governor joins us for an hour at 11. And the general manager of the T, Phil Eng, joins us at 1, both for Ask the whatever their jobs are. No BPL on Friday. Please make a note of this if you're a Friday joiner, because the library is closed. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about making daylight saving time year-round or not. And we're also obviously prompted by the fact that yesterday or last night, you should have turned your clock forward an hour. And Mary from Rentham, I think, speaks for both me and Marjorie on this. Here's what she just said.
Make it stop.
Exactly. We are with Mary. Make it stop.
Make it stop.
Thank you. I am totally with her. And the way you would make it stop is by just saying it's permanent daylight saving time. Some people want permanent, whatever the other thing is called, standard time. Is that standard time?
Yes.
Some people want the half-hour kind of thing. That other woman talked about Atlantic time for the eastern
Apparently,
part
Jim,
of the Eastern time zone.
According to Judith, who just
Who's
texted,
Judith?
she wants to know if you listen to the reports on National Public Radio that say standard time is healthier for everyone. It's like the weather in New England. If you think it gets dark too early, wait a few weeks.
As I think Donald Trump got it totally right on this. It's fake news. That is my position. By the way, the most important impact on your health is the changing of the time zone.
It's the changing. That's
right.
right.
And so, regardless, get rid of the change and take it from there.
Okay, here is a little sound. Remember that great HBO show, Veep?
One of the best shows ever.
Okay, in this clip, staffers Ben and Kent are trying to explain to their boss, Congressman and walking homunculus, Jonah Ryan, why he's 2 hours late to a critical meeting.
Happy daylight savings time. Saving.
Daylight savings time is today?
Saving, and it started yesterday.
Well, I set my watch back for daylight savings time.
Saving, not saving. You set your watch the wrong way. It's neither a plural nor a possessive.
No, it's spring. I springed backwards.
No, you spring forward.
Have you ever watched girls' gymnastics? That makes no sense.
You could just get the correct time from your phone.
Oh, could I? Well, guess what? My phone fell in the toilet, so who's the smart guy now, Ken?
That's pretty good. 877-301-8970 is the number. Did you change all your clocks? We didn't talk about the ones that don't automatically change or not?
Yes, I did.
You did not.
I did.
You did not.
Yeah, it's very disturbing to have the wrong, we're going to talk about this later, unfortunately, to have the wrong time on the clocks in your house.
How about if you have half them on the correct time?
That's right.
Because they automatically change, like on your phone, and half on the wrong time.
Yeah, it's funny. The older things, some things will change, and some clocks won't.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, because, that's a joke, right?
No, I don't understand it.
Well,
they're old. The newer ones change, and the older ones don't.
Yeah.
I figured that's pre-internet. Is that why?
Okay, well,
I guess I have a really old oven.
You might have an old oven. Okay.
A really old radio.
Fine. Let's go to Tim. Oops, no, we're not.
We're not going to Tim. We're going to Anne-Marie in Providence.
Hello,
Hi,
Anne-Marie in Providence.
Hey there.
Hi.
Hey, so I'm from Indiana, and
You
I
are?
know where it is.
You are?
I am. I'm a Hoosier.
How well did you know Mike Pence when you were living in Indiana?
You know, I've been out here over 20 years.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
How about Gene Hackman, Hoosiers? That was one of his big movies.
One of the greats.
Remember that?
Go ahead. I think we're ruining this call.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
that's a good
Anne-Marie.
one, yeah. Although Breaking Away is my all-time favorite Indiana movie.
That's the bicycle one, right?
It is the bicycle
Oh,
one.
yeah. That was a good one.
That's pretty good.
Poor Gene Hackman.
Yeah, he's dead. Okay.
I know.
Anne-Marie,
growing
what's
in
up?
Indiana.
Yeah.
Yeah, so growing up there, the time never changed. Indiana and Arizona were the only states that had no time change.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm in the car with my dog. It's a dog park. She
That's
might be
okay.
wanting to
That's
hear you.
okay.
But anyhow, yeah, so the time didn't change when I was growing up. And I've been out here over 20 years, like I said, and I've just never gotten used to it. It's completely stupid.
So why? So
Well, wait.
what's the deal in Indiana? I thought they were like us on the Eastern Standard Time. So they ignore it, I guess.
now.
What?
Yeah, they are now. They some moron. It could have been Mike Pence, but some politician decided that Indiana should also change time with everybody else.
Okay, so out there, so you're
this just goes to show you that the cows don't care.
The cows don't care.
Something about no.
Yeah.
They used to say it's for the farmers or something, but if Indiana all those years didn't change.
Well, can I tell you something? Even though I am big time daylight saving time year round, I did speak to some farm people when I wrote this piece for the Globe a couple of years ago. It allegedly screws up their milking cycle. Is that true or is that BS, Anne-Marie?
I have never tipped a cow. I grew up in a huge city, an enormous Indianapolis is a huge city. I'm really sorry I can't answer that.
Anne-Marie, call again. You're great. That was a fabulous call. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. From Indiana. It's pretty exciting, isn't it?
Marjorie's VCR is still flashing midnight as a texter.
You didn't really ask why new devices and change automatically and old ones don't, did you? Or did you really?
I really am a Luddite when it comes to that. So why is that? Why don't you explain it to me, Jim?
I can't. Here's from Jim from Duxbury. The big question on my mind is into which time zone will Greenland fall once it is part of the United States. You see, the Liberal Party picked a new leader yesterday who's going to be the prime minister. How weird is it when you have those parliamentary systems? When the guy who's head of the party who becomes prime minister resigns, there's not even a popular vote. The party meets, they pick this guy to head the Liberal Party, and this guy Kerry, I think by Friday, is going to be the prime minister of Canada, and he obviously has to run at some point.
Yeah, Trudeau gave a big speech.
Yeah. Tim in the car, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you so much for calling. Hi.
Good morning, folks.
Thank you.
I thoroughly enjoy your show. I've been listening to you and talking to you for years. So let's file my comment under the those that ignore history are doomed to repeat it.
Okay.
Beautiful.
File.
Yeah, thank you.
In 1974-75, in the middle of the first Arab oil embargo, the United States Congress voted to enact full-time daylight savings time in the middle of the winter.
And I got rid of it in like a minute. I know.
January 1975.
Oh, wow.
You probably already know what happened.
They got rid of it.
9 months later, the Congress of the United States repealed said law.
Yeah.
Why? Because there were parts of the upper Midwest and parts of the western part of the time zones that were dark at 9:45 in the morning in January. Yeah. And they didn't want to go through that again, and that's why we changed the clocks twice a year, because we want to placate the elites that don't get up as early in the morning. Sorry, Jim.
That's okay.
And
Thank you.
yet still not have it be dark all day long in the winter. So that's what's going on. So, like I said, those that ignore history are doomed to repeat it. So make it. That's why
brilliant call, Tim.
They had a unanimous consent in the Senate, and like only four people were there. Unanimous consent. All four of them voted to enact full-time daylight savings time.
That was in 2023 or something.
Okay.
Yeah, it is true. That part is true, by the way. The unanimous vote was not really a unanimous vote because almost nobody was there. Tim is right about all this.
Thank you for that call. Now Tim raises the question. Of course, I have no idea because I have not studied this, Jim, as you have
I have
rather
studied it. What do you want to know?
Excessively.
Yeah.
Why don't we just have 6 time zones?
That is a really good question. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that... No, the reason you really want an answer?
Sure.
Indiana is objective. That is my
the Hoosiers are standing in the way.
No, they really are.
Why don't we have 15 time zones?
By the way, we try to listen to pay attention to listeners. Anonymous just texted and said, "Can't wait for the next discussion. Toilet paper hanging over or under the roll bar." Actually, we will be doing that tomorrow at 11:15. So
it has to be
wait.
over the roll bar.
Totally over.
Absolutely.
I don't even understand the under.
So upsetting.
Do you even understand the under?
I don't know.
Understand why anyone would do that.
But when I go to someone's house and
I change it.
I change it.
I do. And you know what I often do if I go back to their house a second time and they have changed it back? I take the bar and just put the toilet paper in the sink. Just so that'll teach you, right? And I think they get the message. Don't you think they get the message?
I think they do.
You know what's so the interesting thing is not many people have a level of passion, except for Mary, our first caller here, who says it's got to stop.
Well, lots of people are saying that we should petition.
I know. There was passion, and we're missing that from most of the callers today. They have positions.
It's hard for most
but it's not
of
as
us
impassioned
to get as worked up
By
about
the way,
this
you know,
as you are.
I want to say what I said
People
at
want
the
to petition Elon Musk on it. That's the
He
problem.
could make it happen, by the way.
Yeah, he should make it happen.
Could he make it
could
happen?
give us 6 time zones, Jim.
He could give us 106 time zones.
Why don't you send him an email?
Yeah, I will do
See
that.
what you can do.
Let's go to
Elaine in Cambridge. Thank
Hi,
you for
Elaine.
calling.
What's your position?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks so much for taking my call.
Thank you.
Sure.
You're not going to like this, Jim. But
Okay, we'll cut you off quickly. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I haven't called in more than 2 years.
Okay, you can have another couple of seconds. Go ahead.
I hate daylight savings in March.
Saving.
You know, you guys are old enough as I am.
Yeah.
Remember when we used to turn the clocks ahead at the end of April?
Ed Markey changed that.
That's right.
He did.
When it is spring, and it wasn't so difficult as it is for some people like me now.
Yeah.
So I would gladly go back to that. But if we had to pick one choice, I would go for standard time, because to me, all daylight savings does is just force me to get up an hour early in the morning.
Okay, Elaine, what did you say you called last 2 years ago?
Yeah.
You're barred for another 2 years, so we'll talk to you in 2 years. That was an excellent
Okay.
call, but I'm sorry you can't call back.
Here are a couple of texts.
What is it?
Who's the a-hole? Daylight saving time or standard time?
Wow.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of that, we have a double dip today. We've never done this
We have a
before.
double
Marjorie insisted
dip.
on this. Our first talker, as we call it, when
Marjorie
you call
insisted.
in, she
Yeah.
insisted on this, was daylight saving time permanent or not. And even though Thursday is Am I the A-hole Day, we decided to advance it, and we're going to do it Thursday too, this afternoon. When are they married or are they just boyfriend and girlfriend? Whatever.
Girlfriend and boyfriend.
A woman gets in the car
Yep.
and her partner, who owns the car, has refused to spring ahead, turn
That's
the
right.
clock ahead, and they get into a big thing. And we're going to ask you, this will be roughly 1:30 so you can prepare for the next few hours. Who is the a-hole?
Did you see this text?
What does it say?
This is a real text from Talia in Fitchburg.
What'd she say?
At daylight saving time, I change all the clocks in my house, but leave the manual one in my car because it annoys my partner. So I'm committed now. This might have had something to do with the Reddit post on who's the a-hole.
Maybe Talia is the one who posted that thing.
Possibly.
That'll be at 1:30.
And then we just sum this up, Jim.
What is it?
We have several texters who say change it once by half an hour and never, ever speak of it.
Can I just say, we're going to
again.
end this because the congressman is ready and we got to take a break. Let me just say, you really are a bit of a fraud. You call me as soon as the light is later, like last night it was, you call me and luxuriate in the You do. You do. She calls me or texts me.
I didn't.
And then she denies
You
it. You know what you should
chastised
do?
me for missing all your texts this morning,
Why don't you
Jim.
move to Western Indiana and see how you feel then, Marjorie, okay? Got to take a break.
Okay, Jim. Thank God. We're talking to Congressman Stephen Lynch up
We
next. Yes, he was at that hearing last week about the immigration rules in Boston and elsewhere. We're going to talk to him about that. We're going to talk about DOGE assaults on the Postal Service, the Small Business Administration, TSA, and his meeting with Ukraine President Zelensky. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Make it stop.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Craig Ferguson, the Emmy and Grammy-nominated comedian, brings his wit and signature storytelling to the Wilbur by way of his Pants on Fire tour with comedy that is politics-free. We'll find out if that's challenging or liberating. Plus, larger-than-life movies. We'll get an overview of the Coolidge Corner Theater's Big Screen Classics series. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you. And The Huntington, presenting The Triumph of Love, Marivoux's beloved classic where mistaken identities, hilarious complications, and deeply felt desires collide. On stage March 7th through April 6th. huntingtontheater.org. And Advocates, the human services provider helping individuals facing mental health, substance use, and other life challenges, is now hiring clinicians. Learn more about their supportive culture and open positions at advocates.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow. Ask the mayor. An hour of Mayor Michelle Wu taking your questions. 11 o'clock. Back at the library on Wednesday. Ask the governor. Maura Healey will be at the library with us for an hour taking your questions. And then Phil Ang in the 1 o'clock hour. GM of the T, will be with us to answer your questions as well. Same day on Wednesday. No library on Friday because they're closed for some training. We're joined now on Zoom by Congressman Stephen Lynch, representing Massachusetts' 8th District, Boston, and 20 other cities and towns. Serves as a senior member of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, which, as you very well know, held a major hearing last week. Representative Lynch, good to see you. And that is one hell of a room you were sitting in, wherever that is. That is beautiful. Is that your house?
Yeah, it's my house in Southie, yeah.
That is gorgeous. A lot of leather, a lot of books. You're looking good there. It's excellent.
Well, you got one of those. I don't know why I was there. I was there at your house for something years ago. You got that one of the cool connected houses. Yeah, it's a really neat. How old is that house, Congressman? Quite old, right?
Yeah, late 1800s, I think.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's a really cool house.
Good to see you, Congressman.
So
good to see you, Jim. Good to see you, Marjorie.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. So Jim mentioned you were at the hearing last week that it featured 4 mayors, including our own Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, defending their so-called sanctuary city immigration laws. What'd you make of the whole thing?
I thought our mayor did exceedingly well.
Yeah.
I think they all did well, although I know that Mayor Adams took some incoming because of, the side deal that he made apparently with the president and justice to drop the charges against him. So, besides that, I thought they all did very well in terms of responding to some of the criticisms of members of Congress. And they gave it back in full measure, telling Congress, you need to pass comprehensive, immigration reform and do your job, and it'll make it easier for us to do our jobs, which is true.
And you talked about how much money they made fundraising the Republicans off this meeting, too. It was a big hit in that regard, I guess, right?
Yeah. They've done that a couple of times now. This time, though, they actually put out like a movie trailer to drive people to the hearing. So that's number one, an abuse of power. And I had my staff looking to see if there's some legal prohibition against doing that because it's a public building, but no luck so far.
I don't know if this is an abuse of power, and I don't know if you've had him before your committee. Mayor Wu suggested you call him in and swear him in. Homan, who is the border czar, this bullying language, I don't know how you react to this. We're going to bring hell to Boston. If Wu can't deal with this, she's got to get the hell out of the way. What's your reaction to this macho, I assume to please Donald Trump kind of behavior from this character?
No, you're exactly right. It's to please his boss. Totally inappropriate. He will be before the committee at some point, but obviously they control the time and the date. But yeah, I know there are a lot of members on both sides that want to hear from him, and the threats that he brings are totally inappropriate and unhelpful to his overall task.
My understanding, I don't know if it's gone further than this. We're talking to Congressman Stephen Lynch. Shortly after this hearing, Small Business Administration regional offices were announced to be on the way to being moved out of so-called sanctuary cities, even though we're not technically whatever a sanctuary city is. I think everybody knows what the concept means in terms of cooperation with the federal government. In your estimation, Congressman, is this just the beginning of punishment from the administration for the Bostons and the Chicagos and the Denvers and the New Yorks for doing what Donald Trump doesn't want them to do?
There is some of that, yeah. A couple of things, Jim. One, they announced that, GSA announced that it was the Tip O'Neill building and the John F. Kennedy building were now regarded surplus properties, and they were, expedited for disposal. There's that piece of it. There's also a larger piece that I worry about on Medicaid, where blue states might feel the brunt more keenly than red states. And I'll just give you a quick example. In Massachusetts, we have a huge Medicaid budget. We do a lot with Medicaid. We did a huge expansion. So we do a lot more for people, and there's a bigger dollar number involved. And the way it works with the federal government is the federal government, for every Medicaid dollar, the federal government pays 50 cents and the state pays 50 cents. But a state like Mississippi that hasn't done expansion, they do very little with their Medicaid. The federal government pays 77 cents of every Medicaid dollar and the state pays 23 cents. So you can see that a cut against Medicaid, nationally will fall more heavily on states like Massachusetts, New York, California that have done more with their Medicaid dollars. And so that's another way for them to sort of get at us and punish us. No good deed goes unpunished, as they say, because we've done more with Medicaid dollars.
One last thing about Medicaid. I'm so glad we're going to have Don Berwick with us midweek, who ran Medicaid and Medicare not too long ago for the federal government. And we've talked to John Gruber, who's head of the economics department at MIT. I assume you'd agree with this. The average person seems to think Medicaid is something that focuses purely on poor people. And sadly, we're not in a time when we appear to care much about poor people. But it's also almost everybody's grandmother or mother or father who ends up in a nursing home. It seems to me there's an information gap, Congressman. Do you subscribe to that notion or no?
Yeah, absolutely. Think about our health centers. About 40% of every one of my health centers, Brockton, Quincy, South Boston, Dorchester, 40% of their budget is Medicaid dollars. And you're absolutely right, Jim, on seniors. So much of what they're getting under Medicaid is supported by Medicaid dollars. So every Medicaid cut affects a senior, regardless of income, if they're participating in Medicare, which all of them are.
So what's your prediction here? I mean, Trump is saying he's not going to touch it, but it seems like that's not going to work. The numbers aren't going to work with the tax cuts that they're proposing, even with these cuts in the federal government. So what do you think is going to happen?
So their budget document that every Democrat voted against, and we got one Republican to vote with us as well, their budget document that passed 2 weeks ago included in the Medicaid account a cut. Not just that account, but it included a blueprint for cutting $880 billion from that account. Okay, so there's no way in hell they can, go by this budget document without massive cuts to Medicaid. So that's their plan. I mean, that's what your budget resolution is. It's a plan for budgeting the following year, and that's what the Republicans have included. So that does affect, health centers. It does affect those low income people who rely on it, but so much more.
Steve Lynch, before we leave the Oversight Committee, I want to say this as gently as I can. Watching some of your colleagues and hearing them speak as all of them did the other day, like, for example, Paul Gosar. After Gosar spoke, I don't know if you ever heard the great Molly Ivins line, if his IQ was any lower, we'd have to water him twice a day. I mean, how hard, I mean this sincerely. It's one thing to have somebody on the other side who on the merits disagrees with you. When you have a congressperson on the other side who clearly has absolutely no idea what's going on and doesn't understand the issues, how hard is that for you as a human? I mean, not as you know what I mean? How hard is that? Be honest.
Yeah. You're really putting it to me, Jim.
I'm serious.
I sit like 4 seats over from this guy. So, but I did happen to. I mean, I try to get down to the border, and I went with Gosar to.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we went to Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, parts of Mexico, hit the border, all of that. Oddly enough, at that time, this was a few years ago, he was more concerned about the ability for those southern states to get immigrant labor, in agricultural concerns. So, this is a whole turnaround for him to be as virulently opposed to immigration. Right
that
now.
Was a kind response.
Yeah.
We're talking as Congressman. That's okay. You got to work with the guy. Okay, we're talking to Stephen Lynch.
So, Congressman, the Republicans have this spending bill they've unveiled to keep the government open until September 30th, but they got to get some Democratic votes in that bill to prevent the government from shutting down. So, what is going to happen?
Well, I'm hoping we defeat it. I'm voting against it, and I haven't heard of any Democrats so far that have broken ranks. Although there's 8 or 10 of them that are in districts that Trump won, so a lot of pressure on them. Yeah, I'm not sure how this is going to shake out. And then when it goes to the Senate, I'm not sure. There has been some complaints, but it seems like despite the complaints, Trump is able to roll these people. So we'll have to wait and see.
You know, that's one of the things you hear from. We had a big march over the weekend, a couple of thousand women, mostly women, on Boston Common complaining about the Trump administration. A lot of stuff written about where are the Democrats? You know, how come you guys aren't fighting back harder? What do you make of that? And what do you see as the distress that many of your constituents are feeling about what's happening?
Yeah, I just had a town meeting myself the other night, and there is that angst out there. People want to know what Congress is doing. Unfortunately, the Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. So we can't even get a bill to the floor legislatively to push back on some of this thing, some of these measures. Myself, I'm part of the litigation working group in Congress. So we're working with individual groups, plaintiffs, unions, to file suit, because that's the only venue we have right now to stop some of this stuff. So as of close of business day on Friday, we had 78 federal cases in 11 different districts in 8 different states, 78 cases that we've had a fair measure of success on different measures. But people don't see that. It's a slow process, and they want something, more immediate and more gratifying. But, on behalf of those employees, on behalf of, federal funding grants, things like that, we've been very, very successful. We've had a couple of cases where they've denied us standing, Congress, so we've had to go back and bring proper plaintiffs forward who did sustain the test of standing. So we're doing all this, but obviously the Trump administration is appealing those to the circuit level, and then there are a couple of cases that they've actually requested the Supreme Court to take a look at.
Or just ignored the decisions, like with NIH research funding, which is going to put, I think, Democrats in a tough spot, too. Steve Lynch, listeners may not know, before you were a member of Congress and before you were a state senator in Massachusetts, you were a union leader with the ironworkers. And when I read the story over the weekend about, I don't even understand this as a former union president myself, how the Department of Homeland Security is essentially ending recognition of the union and the collective bargaining agreement with the 45,000 workers at the TSA. So my first, beyond what's your reaction, I'm sure I know what it is, how can they even do this? It sounds like, for those old enough, it sounds like PATCO, the air traffic controllers in Ronald Reagan on day one in 1980. What's going on here?
Yeah, so let me just explain. And I had the same reaction. I wrote my staff immediately when I saw this. I said, they can't do this. You can't unilaterally withdraw recognition of collective bargaining rights from a union. You can't do that. And then I said, am I missing something? And they sent me, we had legal counsel get back to me and said, the TSA employees aren't in Title V, which every other government employee is. When George W. Bush established the Department of Homeland Security, they held out TSA from Title V. So it's almost a voluntary recognition on the part of the executive to give them the power of collective bargaining. Personally, I think from a legal standpoint, and we're going to challenge this, I think once granted, you can't withdraw it. And they've granted in multiple, even Trump in his original term of office recognized the bargaining rights of these employees. So we're going to fight it on that. But that's the essence of the problem. They're not in Title V. And I know this is a little bit dry, but that's basically how they're able to do this. But I think it's challengeable.
I knowing you through the years, I'm pretty sure you speak to workers in the federal government, and you have to have decent morale to do your job well, whether you're a private or public sector employee. And when you have Elon Musk and his chainsaw, and we had a couple of federal workers who were laid off on our show last week.
Horrible.
It was totally horrible. You have 45,000 people who thought they had a collective bargaining agreement.
But not even decent severance. Not even decent severance.
And Friday night emails, and I know it's hard to generalize because there are a couple of million people. What's the mindset of the average federal worker you encounter with this kind of uncertainty and sword hanging over their heads?
Devastated, angry, and I worked with AFG. AFG is the union that went over to TSA at Logan Airport. Myself and Mike Capuano at the time, supporting AFG's efforts to organize these workers. So, they're devastated. That's a tough job anyway. There's you're dealing with the public all the time. You're frisking them, screening them. It's not a happy time for those workers. So, and there's not a lot of advancement. There's not a large layer of management there. You're on the front lines every single day. So, but it's not just them. We have workers from NOAA that are down at Woods Hole that are tracking. I got a niece of mine who's down there tracking whales, and they've passed up a lot. They've got young kids, and now all of a sudden, because they haven't been there more than 2 years, they're on the chopping block. But the research they're doing, and not only that, it's cancer research, it's Alzheimer's research, it's the stuff that, you've got the best and brightest minds saying, okay, I'm going to go to work for, a federal research institute, and then to have them cut loose, and that whole body of research, it's very difficult to get people to come in and then pick up that research where they left off, and there's a lot of time lost, and people with Alzheimer's and cancer don't have time, and that's the difficult part of this.
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
I was going to move on.
I was going to mention Ukraine. Speaking about not having time.
That's what I was going to talk about too. Yeah,
away.
Because I know you've met with President Zelensky of Ukraine, and of course we had that blow-up meeting among Vance, Trump, and Zelensky last week in the Oval Office. So, what'd you make of him when you met him, and what'd you make of the meeting?
He's a good and decent man, I think. In my own estimation, I've met him a bunch of times. From the very, very beginning. And he did nothing but thank us. I just want to hit that point. He did nothing but thank us from the moment I arrived to the moment I left Ukraine. And I've been there a bunch of times. They are so goddamn grateful for the United States. It just turned my stomach to hear J.D. Vance, turn that on him, that he didn't have a suit on, and his country's at war. When your country's at war and you're being invaded, you get to dress, you drop the dress code. I mean, simple as that. So to have him criticize, here's the thing. His people are being butchered, raped. The borders of his country obliterated. The civilians are being attacked directly. And we're playing like this is normal. Like what are you so upset about? Why don't you sit down and talk to these people? It's hard to talk to somebody when they're trying to kill you. Yeah. And they're trying to take out Zelensky every single day. That's what he's dealing with. He came to the United States, sat in our Oval Office, beseeching us for help against an invading power, against an international gangster. And what do our people do? Our president, our commander-in-chief, and vice president, they turn him out to the embarrassment of this country in the eyes of the world. Sweet Jesus. It was a low point in our country's history to see that happen. It's disgraceful. It's just disgraceful.
And it's also when you have somebody as strong and I think courageous as Zelensky, then on behalf of his country, have to go home or at least go to Western Europe and say good things about the United States and President Trump, because what matters more than his personal thing is obviously defending his countrymen. It's really stunning. Well, Congressman, we have good news for you. We've run out of time, so we can't ask you about the jokes you're going to tell at the St. Patrick's Day breakfast. Were you happy that Mayor Wu brought up the whole Irish thing at the hearing there?
Yeah, it was great.
I figure you like it. Okay. You were fairly funny when you were the head of the breakfast. You know that, right?
Thank you. Barely.
Yeah. They got a lot of humor over there in South Boston. That's my understanding anyway. Thank you, Congressman.
Steve Lynch, it's nice to see you. Say hi to Paul Gosar for us, please, too. Nice to see you. Be well.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. We've been speaking with Congressman Stephen Lynch. He is from Massachusetts' 8th Congressional District. Like I said, he's got a great connected house over there in South Boston.
What were you doing at his house?
I don't know. I was doing something. I don't remember what I was doing. Anyway, Ilan Stavans of Amherst College is going to be up with us next to talk about what it really means for Trump to declare English the official language of the United States. He's also going to talk about Mexico's President Sheinbaum, apparently, unlike so many other world leaders, managing to manage Donald Trump. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And McLean Middleton, a regional law firm with over 100 attorneys and locations in Woburn and Boston, serving clients for over 100 years in the areas of corporate law, tax law, litigation, and estate planning. McLean.com. They solve murders with blood, sweat, and tears. Literally. Watch the team of London-based forensic scientists do what they do best. Catch Silent Witness tonight at 9 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head of Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio, live and live streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Amherst College's Ilan Stavans joins us with a reaction to Donald Trump making English the official language in the U.S., which had so far made it almost 250 years without one. He'll also tell us how Mexico's president is forging a new path for world leaders on how to handle an unhinged American president.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we'll ask Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who's been making headlines for recent acts of resistance to Trump, walking out of the president's speech to Congress last week and then leading the charge at the House Oversight hearing with mayors of immigrant-friendly cities, including Boston's Michelle Wu. We'll also ask Pressley about what local leaders can do to support Haitian and Venezuelan migrants whose temporary protected status was just revoked. That's all ahead. Second hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. With just days to spare, congressional Republicans are hoping a new stopgap bill will keep the government open past a Friday deadline. NPR's Claudia Grisales reports it's not clear that the party has votes to avoid a government shutdown.
The Republican stopgap spending plan will keep much of the government funded at 2024 levels, which GOP leaders hope will get fiscal conservatives to join the rest of their party to vote yes. However, it's unclear the party has the votes to pass the partisan measure on their own. The GOP has little room for error this week to get the legislation to President Trump's desk ahead of a Friday night government shutdown deadline. The plan will force spending cuts this year for some entities and put other funding efforts at risk by the end of the year. That's caused alarm among Democrats who say they won't help Republicans pass the measure this time. Claudia Grisales, NPR News.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio is touting the decision to cancel most USAID contracts despite his promise that the U.S. would continue programs that are saving lives around the world. Here's NPR's Michelle Kellerman.
In a message posted on X, Rubio thanks the team led by Elon Musk, which has been dismantling the U.S. Agency for International Development. He says they have worked, quote, very long hours to achieve this overdue and historic reform. According to Rubio, 5,200 contracts have now been canceled. That's 83% of the programs at USAID. He says the remaining programs will be administered by the State Department. In a recent court filing, in one of many lawsuits against the Trump administration's moves aimed at shrinking the federal government, the State Department said more than 90% of USAID programs had been canceled. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
A top Washington Post political columnist and associate editor has quit in protest. Ruth Marcus accuses the paper's chief executive and publisher, Will Lewis, of killing her column that criticized owner Jeff Bezos' move to overhaul the Post's opinion pages in favor of his libertarian priorities. In her resignation letter, Marcus argues that Bezos' drive threatens to break the trust of readers, that columnists are writing what they believe, not what the owner has deemed acceptable. Investors are bracing for more tariffs this week, and that's weighing on the stock market. Here's NPR's Scott Horsley.
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says new tariffs on imported steel and aluminum will take effect Wednesday as scheduled. That's the same day the government set to report on inflation for the month of February. Economists say the 25% import taxes could raise the price of cars, appliances, canned goods, and soda pop. They could also trigger retaliatory tariffs on U.S. exports. President Trump downplayed the fallout, though in an interview with Fox News, he acknowledged there could be a drag on economic growth. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Harvard is freezing all hiring as the university expects federal funding cuts from the Trump administration. From our higher ed desk, GBH's Kirk Carapezza reports the school's president, Alan Garber, announced the temporary freeze in a message to staff and faculty this morning.
Garber says the freeze will apply to all schools and divisions within Harvard. He says the university needs to prepare for a wide range of financial circumstances. The decision comes as President Trump targets higher ed's lifeblood, federal funding for research and teaching.
I think it's incredibly sad.
Ryan Enos teaches government at Harvard. He sees Trump's moves as an attack on democracy.
Authoritarians all over the world, they attack higher education. And it was predictable that when Trump took office, promising to govern as an authoritarian, he was going to do that.
Enos says higher ed leaders need to stand up and fight back. Kirk Carapezza, GBH News, 89.7.
Worcester Regional Vocational Schools are seeing a massive increase in student interest, so much so that applications vastly outnumber the amount of seats they have available each year. Telegram and Gazette reports that with hundreds more applicants than seats in the freshman classes, schools like Bay Path Regional and Montechusett Regional are trying to figure out how to serve more students and build more programs to meet the demand. In sports, it's the Celtics and the Jazz at the Garden tonight. Sunny, mid to upper 50s today, clear and upper 30s overnight. We're looking at low 60s tomorrow. It's 52 in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, a personalized program that bases rates on safe driving habits, at Progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
Yes, Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Yeagan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are streaming at youtube.com at GBH News. A couple of programming notes. Going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow for a session of Ask the Mayor with Michelle Wu. That is from 11 to noon. And then on Wednesday, we got a double hitter actually on Wednesday. We're going to have both the governor and the head of the MBTA, Phil Eng, are both going to be with us on Wednesday. We will not be at the library.
Both taking questions, including the GM of the T, right?
Yeah, ask the governor and then ask the MBTA GM. And then on Friday, we will not be at the library because the library is closed on Friday. Hello again, Jim.
Hey, should I tell people? You want to tell? Should I tell them? I'll tell them. Marjorie and I did the math during the news break, and based upon what's happened since 10 a.m., your 401k shouldn't be gone until at least 1:30 this afternoon. 1:30, 1:35. It'll at least last another 90 minutes.
Bring back the pensions, man. I wish I had a little security here.
Okay, so we're joined now on Zoom by Ilan Stavans, professor of humanities in Latin American and Latino culture at Amherst College. His latest book out at the end of the month is Lamentations of, can you say it for me?
Nezahualcóyotl.
Say it again.
Nezahualcóyotl.
It's exactly what I was going to say. It's a collection of poems about Mesoamerican's first poet, Prince. We'll talk about it next time Ilan is kind enough to join us. It's good to see you. Welcome.
It's such a pleasure to see you both.
Well, thank you very much for joining us again. So President Trump has issued this executive order making English the official language of the country. What do you think this means? What's the impact?
Well, Marjorie, this is an ongoing qualm that the nation has had since its inception, 1776. There have been those in the political elite that have pushed to have it only one language, English, and others that have resisted it. 30 states have an official language. The country as a whole does not. I would prefer not to have it. This is going to be a racist, discriminatory approach to those that speak other languages. This is a country of immigrants. We should be celebrating many more languages, but this administration doesn't seem to know what a second language is. I don't know how many speak a second language, Spanish, Arabic, French. And so if they don't do it, it's hard to think that they will appreciate those that do.
You know, you mentioned, Ilan, the 30 states have English as an official language within our state thing. How is it enforced? Is it a political statement that doesn't mean that everything is only in English? Because, for example, what's very significant to me, and I'm not in any way giving him a credit for this, this is not a mandate that English only be used. It is you may only. The executive order says may, which sounds to me like Trump wants to have it both ways. Basically say, you know, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it, but I'll be able to trumpet the fact that English is now the official language, which amazing. I just looked at a poll from a couple of years ago by Rasmussen, who generally tends a few points to the right, but 81%, assuming they understand what it means, says English is should be the official language of the United States. What's the reality in those 30 states, as best you know?
The reality, Jim, in many of those states, those 30 that I was mentioning, is that it's more peer pressure than actual official or political pressure, meaning that the documents that come from the government mostly come only in English, and you have to file them back, taxes and other such forms in English, and that the day-to-day environment pushes people to have that language as the sole one, but it hasn't really reduced the number of other languages. It is said that 1 out of every 5 households in this country uses a language other than English. And it might be that it's simply in the process of acquiring English that we're speaking Arabic or Mandarin or Spanish or Russian or any other language. It is a shame, as I was mentioning, because so few countries are countries made of immigrants. And that means that every single language in the world is spoken in the United States. Sometimes the very last speakers of a language are in New York City or in LA or in Chicago. So putting even more pressure for English to be the sole and dominant one means that we are making the other languages more vulnerable and putting pressure on people in a way that kind of it kills diversity. And of course, this administration, the word diversity is allergic to it.
Well, the goal is to add to the unwelcoming feeling. I mean, isn't that the primary thing, is to say, we've told you in tangible ways how unwelcome you are in this country. And this is yet another way to say.
And it's also that even here in Massachusetts, you hear complaints all the time that there aren't enough classes for English language learners. So if you come here after you've gotten out of high school and you have to go someplace to learn English, there's long waiting lists for those places. So.
And the point to me, Marjorie, would be to emphasize English. I think everybody in this country should learn English, but that doesn't mean we should give up the other languages that we have. Being bilingual or trilingual is an asset. So you can speak English, you can file your taxes in English, but you can also do many other things with your native or immigrant language, and that adds to the perspective of the world.
Ilan, if you did this already, my apologies. Just I'm so aggravated about this. I may have missed something. Did you talk about what this means? I mean, in terms of application for benefits, potentially voting. I mean, the implications are huge.
The implications are huge, Jim, but as you mentioned, this is only an executive order. It hasn't been voted by Congress. It is not official in the sense that now every country, by the vote of the higher powers, has to be only using English. But yes, it means that whatever remains of government entities after or with this administration, it is exclusively going to be in English. Clinton was one of the last presidents that really stress the fact that we need translators, we need other languages. We're now reversing the approach. Even W. Bush was in favor, and he was a Spanish speaker, he was in favor of allowing other languages to be connected with government. This president seems to not allow for any of that.
One last thing for you. I had forgotten until we were preparing for you today that the reverse of this, well, actually stronger than reverse, a mandate, Bill Clinton mandated when he was president that everything, I don't know what everything means, that everything be translated into appropriate languages. What was the moment when, and obviously I don't remember, maybe I missed it, I'm sure you'd remember if it happened. I don't think there was an uproar, maybe on the margins there was. If I'm right about that, what was the moment that the worm turned? Was it Trump or pre-Trump that people decided you better speak English or you shouldn't be here kind of thing? What was it?
I think the moment was by the fight for bilingual education, which is about 30 years old, if not more. I mean, it goes back to the 60s, but really very as a movement. And you will not be surprised, Jim, to know that Latinos, who you would think would be in favor of speaking 2 languages or 3 languages, in many states like Massachusetts and like Arizona actually voted for only English, thinking that that would be a way for their children to fully learn the language and to close the doors to those that would be coming after them. I'm not talking about all Latinos, but there was a big move within the Latino community to endorse the English language.
But one of the things I remember, because we talked about this a lot at the time, Mitt Romney
I'm remembering it now, actually.
Is that one of the problems here in Massachusetts is kids were graduating from high school still speaking Spanish if they came from Spain, or Portuguese if they came from Brazil, or it's not from Spain so much, obviously from Mexico or from Latin America. And that was the issue, that you get out of high school.
I mean, unable to speak English fluently.
And then you were kind of screwed, because where would you learn it? I think that was the thing, that they were spending too much time bilingual. I'm not an expert on it, but that's what I recall.
Marjorie. And the fact is that then, as now, it is crucial that our classrooms become really proficient in helping students, not forcing students, but making students fall in love with the English language. The English language doesn't have to be a tool of oppression. It can be a tool of expanding your world. And we have to make sure that everybody has a common language. But again, that does not mean that other languages cannot coexist with that common language. At least that's my perspective.
We're talking to Ilan Stavans. Now, we didn't check since we went on the air at 11 o'clock. They're either tariffs against Mexico or they're not, depending upon what time of day it is.
Well,
Claudia Sheinbaum, we talked a lot about the fact there was going to be a woman president of Mexico for the first time, with you, I mean, because the 2 candidates were women, the 2 major candidates. There might have been a Jewish woman president, and there is. And while I think it's fair to say, you wrote about her in the New York Times elsewhere, that you were positive, her ability to, let me see how I'd put this, to work Donald Trump appears to be unexcelled amongst international leaders. Give people a little sense of what she's done on this tariff front and how you feel about it, Ilan.
It takes the approach of not jumping and making impulsive decisions. She reads him, she waits, she calculates, she analyzes the situation. Compared to our Canadian counterparts, she is extraordinary. She seems to be able to convince Donald Trump in one phone call that his tariffs at the beginning of the phone call should be brought down by the end of it. And she's a woman. I think that plays a major role. I think also that she's Jewish. This is an aspect that is important for Trump. But she's a scientist. She's a person who thinks clearly. I admire her very much, and I think in the global standing, very few politicians look at Zelensky, are able to really talk with Trump in a way that he listens.
Well, so are you trouble? Marjorie and I were talking about this morning. When Keir Starmer was in the Oval Office, the new Prime Minister of the UK, even newer than President Sheinbaum is as leader of Mexico, on one level, you were saying this guy really knows how to work Trump when he was showing him the letter from King
Invitation,
Charles
yeah.
But on the other hand, there was a level, I think I speak for you, tell me if I'm wrong, that we were troubled by it, that you have to act that way to be treated respectfully by the leader of the United States government at this time. And I think we both felt the same way about Sheinbaum. She clearly succeeded. She clearly is smart enough to know how you have to work with this guy. But it's also troubling that to succeed with him, you have to play his game to a degree. Are you troubled by that, or are you okay with that?
Look, I'm troubled by Trump to the umpth degree. How do you handle a bully that is irrational, that doesn't understand what the word logic is? So she is facing a very rambunctious and impossible to predict politician who's very powerful because he controls a lot of the ins and outs of the exports and imports to Mexico. And he wants to jump in the sovereignty of the country and start going after the cartels and many other such things. She wants to protect the pride of Mexicans, as she should. She doesn't play his game. She is able to do things that others can't. Of course, I don't know if I would be jumping. I would be going out of my skin when he makes any of those statements. And she doesn't do that. She is admirable at the very least in that. Now, she herself has created an atmosphere of certain intolerance in Mexico. Let's not over-celebrate her. She has limited the role of courts, just like he's trying to do in different parts of the United States, and aligning them with her party, Morena. And that is that worries me. There's less freedom. She is more tolerant than her predecessor, and she is a scientist. This is something that I need to stress time and again. It seems that Trump doesn't understand the scientific mind. He is allergic to it, and she not only is a scientist, she knows how to apply these things for political gains, and that's very important.
Well, it does seem from what I've read that there has been an increase in going after these places where they make the fentanyls. They have made more of an effort there. But I didn't know what to make of this handing over of these cartel leaders, 29 of them, that legal scholars say is against the law in Mexico. So is that a good thing or not a good thing if it violates...
Turning over to our government.
To our government, that's right.
Sure. I mean, Marjorie, you could say, and I can see those who are critical, that she has bent over forward in order to satisfy Trump and say, we are doing everything that you want. Why are you acting so irascibly and irrationally? Yes, those cartel leaders were supposed to be tried in Mexico. Now, the legal system and the prison system is much more complicated and corrupt. And by giving them to the United States, she was trying to control the other side, which is the tariffs, which would literally bring down the economy of Mexico. Major. So she has made certain concessions. Those concessions are helping her in terms of trying to fight corruption and trying to fight the cartels itself without allowing the American army to actually cross the border and go directly against the cartels. How far is she going to be able to go? It's a big question. 80% of Mexicans believe she's doing a great job. This is unheard of in Mexico, where the role of the president is seldom celebrated, let alone, admired. So it's a very important moment. And of course, she's a woman, the first woman in Mexico that does this, and an immigrant, and the daughter of immigrants. I stress that because it's at a time when immigrants or children of immigrants in the United States live in fear. There's one on the other side that is standing up to the bully.
Yeah. And you also, I mean, if anything we learned in this election, it was the economy was the big motivating factor for so many people. And obviously, if Mexico is facing a devastation to their economy, I mean, you can see why you have to weigh it all. That's my guess.
Can you expand on before we move on, can you expand on the fentanyl thing, though? Because you were suggesting the other day, as critical as we've been of Trump on a number of fronts, it appears that he may be getting the result he wants on this front.
This was some reporting from the New York Times, and what they were reporting is that a lot of the I guess I don't know that much about the manufacture of fentanyl, but I guess you do it in these underground places, and that there's been a big crackdown on those places, which are causing people to stop making it in some cases, and that's Trump's big complaint, correct?
There was a very interesting article in the Times maybe a week ago that stated how the cartel fentanyl manufacturers were themselves fearful of Trump's policies, and they are changing addresses. They are deciding not to continue the creation of fentanyl for the time being. He is having an impact of that on that, and Sheinbaum takes some credit for that, and of course Trump does it himself as well. It's an interesting moment. Not only the immigrants are now not going out to get jobs in American cities, the cartels are fearful of what Trump is doing and what Sheinbaum is doing.
Yeah, which I know I'm not a fan of the president, but he did seem to get action that certainly Joe Biden did not on that front.
What's the impact? We've talked ad nauseum on the show with people who have much more expertise than we do about the impact on the United States economy of these tariffs, despite what Donald Trump says, how it's going to make America rich again, or whatever the latest line was yesterday. What's the impact on Mexico if this happens in early April?
Jim, if this happens in early April and they were implemented full tilt at the percentage that Trump wants, it would have an absolutely devastating effect on the economy. The Mexican economy is intrinsically connected with the American economy. So much goes in and out. And a 25% tariff will devastate a number of sectors in the country, and the ripple effect will be enormous. Prices will go up, people will lose jobs, there will be poverty, there will be more crime, there will be political instability. Nobody wants a scenario like that. Mexico is today, I say it with pride because it wasn't before, a model democracy. It has its limitations, but it's a model democracy. It's a country of 135 million people that is figuring out how to make itself valued in the world order and in the Latin American order. And the economy has been very strong. The previous president lifted, he had many challenges and many problems, but lifted a huge segment of the working class into the middle class, and that is the project that Sheinbaum has as well.
One last question about this is, I know the population is not monolithic, like no population is monolithic. What was the perception? We saw how the Canadians are feeling about the United States after the first mention of these tariffs. They even hate Wayne Gretzky now. That's how bad it is. The greatest athlete that ever came. He's a hockey player, for those who don't know. Arguably the greatest hockey player ever, who's a Trump fan and has not trashed Trump over the tariff thing. We know about the booing of the national anthem. We hear all the stories that people are not buying American goods in Canadian stores anymore. What was the Mexican view of the United States, let's say a few months ago, and post-tariff? Has it changed?
Yeah, we don't hear it as much as we do about Canadians and people in Europe in general with Tesla and other such items. But in Mexico, people are choosing not to buy American products. There are many more flags in the country that there used to be. The ubiquity of the American flag, particularly under Trump, in this country is unavoidable. In Mexico, it didn't used to be like that, but now you see them much more. There is much more pride, and there is the conviction that through your pocket, you can resist what is coming from the United States at the same time that the president Sheinbaum is trying to find some kind of negotiating space to make Mexicans feel more comfortable.
Ilan, Stavans, one of the things Democrats are talking most about is that in the United States is that the next major effort for them to reverse this trend are the midterm elections. And after I was reading something about this the last couple of days, immediately I found another piece saying that the Democratic Congressional something committee, the elections group, is added a couple of Latino majority districts that they originally thought were safe for Democrats to, we got to spend a lot of money here and fight. I think I have naively assumed that a significant number of constituencies that voted for Trump who haven't done so terribly well through the first 50 days were going to start moving in another direction. And then I watched CNN last night. They had a couple of Trump voters from Bucks County who were, at least one and a half of those cases, making every excuse they possibly could to give Donald Trump more time. So it appears that the shift away from the Democratic Party amongst Latino American voters continues, even almost 2 months in. Is that a fair statement?
I think it's a fair statement. The big question, Jim, as you, I think, posted, is are Latinos now fully away from the Democratic Party? Have they abandoned it for good? Or was the last election simply as a temporary symptom of what was happening and they can be regained? My impression is that depending on the district, Latinos are fully endorsing Trump, as Latinos of a certain economic strata, and it will remain to be seen how effective the Democrats can at least make them listen, if not regain them. I think the big question right now, just like where's Waldo, is where are the Democrats? What are they doing in order to be able to talk again to the constituency that was with them? Latinos were with them for a long period of time, probably with the exception of the Cubans, the Puerto Ricans, the Mexicans, and now a big shift has taken place.
What do they do? Talk to the Democratic leadership. What would your consulting advice be to change that trend, change any trend that they're on the wrong side of?
Yeah. It used to be labor. It used to be unions. It used to be education. All those words are not part of the vocabulary of this administration. Maybe bringing those words back to the debate. This is the anti-education president, the anti-immigration president, and the anti-union president. And it can't be like this. You know, the pendulum swings in this country, and that's healthy. That's good. How far it will swing and how long it will be on the other side, it's up for grabs. And some of the vocabulary that is now shameful, so to speak, or silence will need to come back. Can Democrats do it? And one of for me, the biggest magical acts of Trump is that he has literally dismantled the opposition. There's no voice there that speaks loud. Bernie Sanders, Ocasio-Cortez, yes, but not even them are attracting the type of audience that one would think right now is needed. And we're waiting. We're really waiting.
Well, you know, we've talked to you about this, and we've talked to other people about the Latino vote, and the consensus seems to be that the big thing for Trump was the economy. And certainly you can understand if somebody comes to the United States years ago or more recently for economic reasons to earn a living, that's, you know, it takes a lot for someone to leave their homeland, right? And if it's to make money, you can understand why people would feel that way. So it seemed to me, if the economy does not do well under Trump, I don't know, that seems to be the big issue from my reading about.
I think you're right, Marjorie. And I think there are two aspects here. On the one hand, I think Latinos are tired of being lectured that they can be helped in order to climb up. Trump has sold a good Bill of Rights to them. You do it on your own. The government is not going to help you, but we want to see you succeed. That is what Latinos are listening. And the other side is exactly what you're saying. If all these tariffs, if all these layoffs result in a big unemployment percentage and prices going up, people are going to start feeling very insecure. Their wallets are going to be empty. And Latinos who are just entering the middle class are going to experience this particularly. So it's a very delicate moment. We'll see where all this goes. The last financial report was not as bad for Trump as I thought it would be just last week. But things are changing very rapidly. He's putting a lot of the eggs in one single basket of the tariffs and of firing all these thousands, millions of people from government. And that's going to affect the economy.
But unfortunately, most people can't afford to put the eggs in the basket. So there you go. Thank you very much.
Jim.
I think that was a setup. I'm not quite sure, but I think I moved in brilliantly to fill the hole there. Ilan Stavans, tell us one more time what your book is that we're going to talk about next visit. What is it and what did you do?
Absolutely. It's called Lamentations of Nezahualcóyotl, and it's a collection of poems translated from Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, into English, written or produced by the only poet that we know by name from the Aztec past, who died about 50 years before the arrival of the Spaniards, and who was a forward-looking philosopher and thinker and urban planner and politician, an amazing individual.
You translated these from the Aztec? Is that what you're saying?
I translated them from both the Nahuatl and from the Spanish. They exist in both editions.
Oh, my God.
And plus, you've got to make them poems. This isn't just translating prose. This is translating poems.
Ilan is laughing for those who are not watching
tremendously, because it's like you're you become the poet yourself, in a sense.
I'm so happy that we're talking about poetry. That is an aspect that is often put aside in all these debates. Yes, poetry and fiction.
We're both fond of poetry. We look forward to talking about it next month.
Yeah,
Ilan,
that could be like a source of solace in these troubled times. Just spend more time reading poetry, Jim.
Ilan, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for your time. Be well.
Thank you both. Be well.
Thank you so much. We will talk again soon, and congratulations on the book. We've been speaking with Ilan Stavans. He's professor of humanities and Latin American and Latino culture at the great Amherst College. The latest book, I don't know if I can pronounce this.
Well, I don't think you probably can.
But we're going to talk all about it next time. It's Nezahualcóyotl.
I think that's pretty close.
Nahuatl Poems, but we'll have it all for you.
Lamentations
Yes, Lamentations of, and we'll have it all for you with the spelling and everything else next time. Anyway.
I actually read a few this morning because I thought they're quite lovely, actually, quite beautiful.
Okay, coming up after, that's really hard though. You know what I'm saying? To translate poetry is really, especially from, it's really hard. Anyway, coming up after a quick break, we're going to talk with another Congresswoman, Ayanna Pressley. Oh, no, we're not. That's right.
She's
later.
Late, so what are we doing?
Coming up after the next break, it's Two More Things, brought to you by me and Jim. And then Congresswoman Pressley is after that. That's right.
It is actually brought to us by you.
Yes, it is.
Okay, then
listening
Pressley.
to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
First, scientists figured out how to restore movement to people who are paralyzed. Then, they realized picking up a cup is easier if you can feel it.
They hooked me up to the machine and it was the first time I felt my index finger and I was like, whoa.
I'm Elsa Chang. How scientists are engineering a sense of touch on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And Standish Village in Dorchester's Lower Mills, providing assisted living residents with programs designed to help seniors stay sharp, social, and independent. Learn more at standishvillage.com/programs.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are live on, we're live. Yeah, we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow for Ask the Mayor, Michelle Wu, 11 to 12. Back at the library on Wednesday, Ask the Governor, 11 to 12. She'll be there in person, as will Mayor Wu. And later on Wednesday, it will be Ask the GM of the T when Phil Lang joins us at the library. Very important, if you're a Friday attendee, we will not be at the library on Friday, this Friday only, because it is closed. Time for two more things, and as always, Marjorie starts with one more thing.
Okay. The man who was so upsetting to those closest to him, his brothers and sisters and his cousin, that would be Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. They all warned us about him, but nonetheless, he is that secretary. And now, even though dozens and dozens of scientific studies have failed to find evidence of a link between vaccines and autism. The Center for Disease Control is now going to begin this large-scale study to re-examine that link. And I think it's worth pointing out there has been a huge increase in autism. According to this New York Times story, 1 in 36 children born today have some kind of relation to autism or some sort of link to autism. It used to be 1 in 150 in 2000. But even 2000 was almost 40 years after vaccinations were introduced into the country. The measles vaccine that he's anti, even though he says he's not, came into wide use in the mid-'60s. So it's odd that he would link these things because for 40 years people were getting this vaccine before this huge increase happened. But anyway, that's what's happening. We're probably going to waste a lot of money on that. And meanwhile, and also get the hopes up of people who have autistic children or autistic themselves that they can blame a vaccine and they'll be wrongly blaming a vaccine. Meanwhile, there's this continued outbreak of measles out there in Texas. The secretary, that would be Kennedy, was not in Texas dealing with this last week. He was taking selfies of himself hiking in California. But meanwhile, they're having real problems trying to convince people because of the Children's Health Defense organization that he used to run, convincing people they need these vaccines. He talks about how you can treat measles with cod liver oil and vitamin A. And the only place vitamin A is shown to be helpful at all, not in preventing, but in treating it to some degree, is in these really underprivileged, starving countries where people don't have enough, little kids don't have enough vitamin A. But they interviewed this woman out at this nurse, a nurse, mother of 3 who's not vaccinating her kids. And she says what she believes and what RFK Jr. has to say. And she and her husband have prayed about vaccines, and they believe in their children's God-given immune system. So what she does, a nurse, is give her children a daily dose of strawberry-flavored cod liver oil, which contains a lot of vitamin A, while she's in Texas, where this measles outbreak is spreading.
Wow.
So,
late last year, Beacon Hill created a first-of-its-kind ever exemption from the state's consumer protection laws. With a late-night amendment, no shock there, and no roll call vote, even less shock there. It applied to a company which provides what are called shared appreciation mortgages. There's only one company that does it. It's called Blue Hub Capital. Such mortgages happen like this. A homeowner is about to be foreclosed upon, but before they are, Blue Hub buys the house from the bank, sells it back to the homeowner, who in return agrees to share profits when they sell, pay off, or refinance with the mortgage company. Sounds good, right? Well, not to the homeowners who sued 5 years ago, claiming that this is an example of predatory lending. Well, while the law is settled, the litigation is not. And there was a move by Blue Hub to have the case thrown out, saying the very quietly passed law was retroactive, which is as curious a representation as the law itself, since the governor and the attorney general said it was not retroactive. They said it here on BPR. And are you ready? As did the owner of Blue Hub herself when she testified before the legislature a couple of years ago. You heard me right. She told the legislature it would not be retroactive. Then she argues before the court that it was. Now, as she told us last week, the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, a longtime opponent of this law, is putting together regulations. Here's hoping she considers what Beacon Hill did not, and that would be fairness. Check that out. Stay on top of this. We'll continue to talk to the Attorney General.
Talk about last week's hearing about immigration laws that she was at, and of course our mayor was at. We're going to hear about that and a lot of other things coming out of D.C. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Universities are grappling with how to respond to recent calls to end diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
We're getting wokeness out of our schools.
Many are dropping programs, leaving students hanging.
There's a lack of career support to find a job in the DEI field.
Where are the leaders who are fighting like hell? We haven't seen them. We haven't heard from them. Where are they?
I'm Kirk Carapezza. That story later today on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Cambridge School of Culinary Arts in Porter Square, offering teen and adult recreational cooking and baking workshops, series, and cooking couples classes for culinary enthusiasts. CambridgeCulinary.com. And Trinity Rep, presenting La Tempestad, The Tempest, a magical, multilingual adaptation of Shakespeare's classic. Begins March 27th. Tickets at trinityrep.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor for an hour with us tomorrow at the library, the governor and the GM of the T for an hour. Also on Wednesday at the Boston Public Library, your opportunity to ask them questions. Now joined by Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. She represents Boston's 7th District in Congress. And like Stephen Lynch, who we talked to earlier in the show, she also serves, as you saw, on the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform that had the hearing with the mayors the other day. Here's the Congresswoman last week at the committee hearing with 4 blue city mayors trying to enter an article into the record, interrupted by the bloviating, I would argue, bullying chair of the committee, Comer. Here it is.
Data from Texas shows that U.S.-born Americans commit more rape and murder than immigrants.
Listen, this trend of you all trying to get thrown out of committee so you can get on MSNBC is going to end. We're not going to put up with it.
This is my procedural right as a member of this committee.
You can go with Mr.
Record.
Frost and Mr. Green.
I'm reclaiming my time.
That's what you want. No.
Well, we will say yes. Here she is, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Welcome, Congressperson.
Good to be with you, and I'll always say yes to you all. I'm sick as a dog, and I don't know if you're aware. Today has actually been declared as a National Day of Rest for Black women, and yet here I am.
I didn't know that.
That's a fact.
What's that about?
It's about the labor of Black women and on the front lines of movements, and we have to do everything we can in this moment, but a rest is also part of the resistance. So a National Day of Rest for Black women has been declared.
Well, we are really appreciative you took a minute out for us. Thank you.
And Congresswoman, you weren't obviously resting when you were trying to get your points across at the hearing last week. So tell us what that dust-up was about, what you're trying to do.
Well, first, let me just look. Republicans, they use that hearing to push false and harmful narratives about immigrant families. And I was correcting the record. And it's important that people know that I was operating within the rules and procedures. I'm 6 years in Congress. I know how to ask for unanimous consent to introduce an article for the official record. And in fact, had done it earlier in the hearing. So I was exercising my rights under committee rules to introduce articles into the record. And Chairman Comer was just seeking to silence me for it. His reaction was highly inappropriate. It was outsized. He was shouting me down and threatened me with removal from the committee simply because he didn't want to hear this fact read out loud, that U.S.-born Americans commit more rape and murder than immigrants. And as a survivor, excuse me, of sexual assault myself, it was critical to me to voice the facts. And so I was reeling from it a little bit. It's unfortunately something that's become normalized. It is just,
I, as an observer, and we broadcast a decent amount of this hearing, and then I watched all of it later at that night and the next morning. It seems to me that if they were honest, the Republicans who thought they were going to do a replay of Lee Stefanik and Virginia Fox with the 3 university presidents last year had to be disappointed. The 4 mayors more than held their own against the Republican charge. Did they not?
Absolutely. They were in effective and vigorous defense of their city's values and every resident that calls their city's home.
We have a limited time today, so I wanted to move on to something else. I don't know if your health preclude. Did you end up in Texas yesterday, or you couldn't make it?
Yes, I did make it to South by Southwest.
Okay. you were there as the co-chair of the Reproductive Freedom Caucus, and I wanted to ask you, I was watching the other night a little bit of the confirmation hearing of the, I don't know if he's been confirmed yet, the likely head of the FDA. And among the troubling things he said was that he would take a fresh look at mifepristone, which to me is arm's length, does not need a fresh look. It's been proven to be amazingly safe, some say safer than aspirin, for 24 years. How much concern do you have about the feds deciding that they're going to walk back not only the approval of mifepristone, but the expansion of its availability that happened under Joe Biden, Congresswoman?
Well, it's very upsetting, very worrisome. And, Jim, I might ask you to be an honorary member of the Reproductive Freedom Caucus.
That's right.
I accept. Thank you.
All the facts accurate there. Mifepristone medication abortion is safe, legal, and effective. And I do want to say, as the co-chair for the Reproductive Freedom Caucus, and this is a rename, this has been the pro-choice caucus for many years. But one of the reasons why we've renamed the caucus, and I co-chair it with Diana DeGette from Colorado, is to speak to the totality of reproductive health. So much of our debate is about abortion access, which is essential life-saving healthcare. But it is also about IVF and contraceptives and birth control and miscarriage management and also mifepristone. So it just speaks to the totality of reproductive health. And that is why I was invited to South by Southwest to participate in a fireside chat with the Emancipator about where we find ourselves in this movement and at this moment.
Yeah, Trump kind of backed off after I think he saw that the huge blowback to the Supreme Court's decision restricting abortion. I wonder, he seems to have figured out that this is not a popular political issue, despite many Republicans still pushing for it. So what do you think that impact his kind of wishy-washy abortion stance will mean?
Well, unfortunately, I think it resulted in his election because, as we found in that 1 in 3 women in this country live in states with abortion bans. And wherever abortion was on the ballot, red states, blue states, purple states, even in the state of Florida, they had to raise the threshold. People did affirm abortion care as health care or as a matter of just freedom, bodily autonomy. Their agenda ostensibly is an anti-freedom agenda. As laid out in Project 2025, their playbook for wholesale harm, we're in the midst of a nationwide march towards a national ban on abortion, which is a nation of forced birth. When we don't have the infrastructure of universal child care or paid leave. So I want people to continue to be focused on reproductive justice and abortion access. It may not be getting as many headlines as all the other ways in which the Trump-Musk presidency are solving democracy, but abortion justice remains as urgent as ever, and the majority of people in this country do support this issue.
So maybe I didn't ask it as well. So you think that all those votes for abortion access, even in red states, that didn't impact the GOP?
Oh, I'm sorry. What I was actually saying is that Trump muddied the waters on where he was on this issue.
Yeah.
Because he was saying things like he was the father of IVF and, things like that.
Yeah.
He muddied the waters, but the plan has always been clear as laid out in Project 2025. And as co-chair of the Reproductive Freedom Caucus, I'm more resolved than ever to continue pushing back to make reproductive freedom a reality for every person who calls this country home. And we're doing that aggressively. We're doing that through amicus briefs, through litigation, through legislation, through mobilization. And I was proud to be invited to participate in South by Southwest to speak to this issue because, of course, Texas has some of the most draconian laws and women have died because of it. And that's why we can't let up in our organizing efforts. And then finally, I do want to say that I'll be reintroducing today, I think this will be the third time that I'm doing it, an Abortion Providers Appreciation Day resolution. I think what people miss in this, as we speak about the criminalization of those seeking abortion care, is that providers are also being criminalized, as are prescribers. And so today I'm joining with Senator Hirono and Peters in reintroducing a resolution designating March 10th as Abortion Providers Appreciation Day. There is just no just world in which abortion care providers should have to fear for their own lives and the lives of their patients. I think a lot about Dr. Ken Ilan, who I had a square down to in the South End, convicted of, and I did that as a Boston City Councilor, convicted of manslaughter for performing abortion care. So we just can't let up and doing everything possible to blunt these harms because lives are at stake. And when I was in Texas, I'm just so painfully reminded of that. Again, people frame the debate just about abortion access, but what if it makes pregnancy more dangerous? Women who desperately want to be pregnant and want those babies, who receive devastating diagnoses while they're pregnant and then are forced to carry babies that they know are not viable, and that after they've given birth to them, they'll spend those brief moments on earth fighting for their lives, gasping for breath, only to die. Women that have sepsis and their whole bodies are bleeding out, and doctors are afraid to care for them for fear of incarceration. And we've even seen the infant mortality rate increase in states like Texas, and that is for all the reasons I just enumerated.
We're talking to the under the weather Ayanna Pressley. Congresswoman, you and your fellow Democrats had lots of different reactions to I don't know about different reactions, different methods of reaction to Donald Trump's speech before the joint session the other night. Everybody saw Congressman Green stand up, ultimately got kicked out and censured a few days later. Some held signs. You and some others walked out of the speech. Others just sat there and made comments or didn't. Afterwards, I'm sure you've seen the polling that shows nearly 3/4 of Democrats are not happy with how their Democratic Party and its leaders are responding to Trump. Are you as dissatisfied as 3/4 of the rank and file Democrats are?
Well, we're a Big Tent caucus for a reason. And so, there are varying viewpoints. What I see is, a caucus where everyday people are focused on centering the people that are harmed, by this policy violence every day. And so far as the State of the Union, how I experienced that was that everyone was protesting in their own way. Some people felt strongly that to stay the entire time, that was their form of protest, to take up space in that way and to look Trump in the eye. For me, I attended that speech initially just for the purposes of honoring my guest, Claire, a former HUD worker who was unjustly terminated as a part of Musk and Trump's assault on federal agencies, someone who enforces fair housing laws. She's an Everett resident and a wheelchair user. And she endured, ableist inconveniences because government buildings are not very accessible at all. And in the midst of a personally disruptive life event, her concern is really just about the disservice to the American people and the communities that she served in that role. So I didn't want her to have navigated all those inconveniences, and I didn't honor her by taking up space for a moment. But then I had to leave because we were sitting in a chamber that had been desecrated and violated by January 6th insurrectionists, an insurrection that was incited by Donald Trump. And the fact that we were in that very space that had been violated in such a way that he had pardoned those insurrectionists. And I couldn't sit there and pretend this was some equivalency. It was not a normal joint address of Congress. There's nothing normal about this. So that was what felt most authentic for me. I just could not in good conscience sit through his entire speech and give an audience to someone who has such callous disregard for the American people, but also, can I just say, of Congress as a co-equal branch of government and our constitutional power of the purse.
Well, we only have a minute left, but beyond Tuesday night or whatever night it was, are the Democrats fighting hard enough in your estimation?
Look, this is unprecedented in every way. I think we are having to innovate and figure out in real time how best to match the energy. And that is my appeal in this moment, that the rhetoric is hitting different, the policies are hitting different. And so we have to move differently. And that's why, although I've been a member of Congress for 6 years, and even in his first presidency, I've never walked out of a State of the Union or a joint address of Congress. But we have to match their energy. We have to move differently. They are, this is truly a constitutional crisis, and they are operating with lawlessness. And I don't want the American people to think that these proposals, many of which are unlawful, to see them as an inevitability. We cannot concede to that. So we have to agitate, resist, obstruct. It does bother me that I keep being asked, what do I think that I can find common ground? What can we do that's bipartisan? There doesn't seem to be a party to do bipartisan work with. This is just, right now they're operating as cowards who have abdicated their responsibility to the American people. But they are also being just, they've ceded their power as members of Congress, and they're being complicit in this wholesale harm. I mean, they're just unserious. They're more focused on censuring people. They're more focused on, they've introduced legislation to get Donald Trump's face on currency.
Yeah.
They're unserious. So I will, sit at the table and work with anyone who's serious about lowering the cost, lightening the load for people, harnessing their aspirations, giving them the dignity, of work, and the peace of mind that comes with knowing that your family's going to be okay.
Congresswoman,
we're out of time. Hey, feel better.
Thank you.
Try a little Patsy Cline or something.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much for
A
your time.
little Motown for Flash Wiley. That's how he was.
Oh, my God, the great
wonderful
Flash
point.
Wiley. What a wonderful tribute to him, too.
Congresswoman, good to see you, or good to talk to you. Be well.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
of course, was the voice of Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who was kind enough to join us, even though she's not feeling that well. She represents the Massachusetts 7th Congressional District. Right after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to talk about connecting people with educational and employment services when they are struggling, from the JVS, Boston's Kara Khazatsky and Dawn Hayes. That's next on Boston Public Radio.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio. You remember Dawn Hayes from her decades hosting Lottery Live, which made her a key figure in the GBH podcast Scratch and Win. These days, though, she's with the group JVS Boston, one of the oldest and largest providers of adult education and workforce development services in Greater Boston. She'll join alongside JVS Boston President and CEO Kira Khazatsky. They'll talk about what they do and whether their work is threatened by Donald Trump.
I'm Marjorie Egan, and I can't believe I agreed to this, roping the phone lines and text lines again for a second daylight saving debate, this time with a special BPR Am I the A-hole spin. A girlfriend is annoyed that her boyfriend won't update his car's digital clock. If he knows what time it really is, why does it matter? Or is this just cause for a breakup? So who is the a-hole? The girlfriend, the boyfriend, or Jim for making us talk about daylight saving twice in one show? That's next on the third hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump does not seem to be ruling out the possibility of a recession. Asked about it on Air Force One yesterday, he said there is a period of transition, but in the long run, he says the economy will be the better for it. NPR's Tamara Keith reports Trump says he's still moving ahead with reciprocal tariffs next month, and that might just be the beginning.
Trump made the comments in a sit-down interview on the Fox News program Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo.
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time.
He dismissed concerns raised by business leaders that the on-again, off-again tariffs in recent weeks have created uncertainty, saying that's just a talking point. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
Canadian Prime Minister-elect Mark Carney is predicting that his country will prevail in its trade war with the U.S. Carney was elected the Liberal Party's leader yesterday in a landslide vote to succeed Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. NPR's Jackie Northam has more on the leader tasked with steering Canada through threats posed by President Trump.
I suspect it'll be a much different dynamic between Carney and Trump than it was with the president and Prime Minister Trudeau. They didn't get along. And in fact, over the past few weeks, relations between the two men were really fraying. Trump calling Trudeau governor and Trudeau calling the president Donald and quoting an editorial saying the tariffs were a very dumb idea. So Carney could represent a fresh start, but he has warned that he would be very tough on Trump, which is something he indicated in his acceptance speech on Sunday.
NPR's Jackie Northam reporting. President Trump's proposed cuts to the budget could impact federally funded school lunch programs. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports the cutbacks could force schools to either absorb the costs or reduce services for more than 30 million kids who rely on the meals.
The National School Lunch Program, which provides free or discounted meals based on family income, operates in roughly 100,000 public schools in the U.S. Erin Heisom, a child nutrition policy expert, says studies show a link between proper nutrition and academic performance.
Teachers report better classroom behavior, and there's improved academic outcomes, improved test scores, particularly in math. We know children cannot learn on an empty stomach.
Trump's potential cutbacks to school lunch programs could disproportionately impact students who come from lower-income families and kids who live in rural areas. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Harvard is freezing all hiring as the university expects federal funding cuts from the Trump administration. From our higher ed desk, GBH's Kirk Carapeza reports the school's president, Alan Garber, announced a temporary freeze in a message to staff and faculty this morning.
Garber says the freeze will apply to all schools and divisions within Harvard. He says the university needs to prepare for a wide range of financial circumstances. The decision comes as President Trump targets higher ed's lifeblood, federal funding for research and teaching.
I think it's incredibly sad.
Ryan Enos teaches government at Harvard. He sees Trump's moves as an attack on democracy.
Authoritarians all over the world, they attack higher education. And it was predictable that when Trump took office, promising to govern as an authoritarian, he was going to do that.
Eno says higher ed leaders need to stand up and fight back. Kirk Carapeza, GBH News, 89.7.
Boston City Council holds a hearing today about the city's Trust Act, which prohibits local law enforcement from engaging in federal immigration enforcement. As Boston Mayor Michelle Wu pointed out in her congressional hearing in Washington last week, law enforcement in Boston works with ICE on criminal cases. However, today's hearing comes as the Trump administration suggests cutting federal funding to cities that do not comply with its deportation efforts. In sports, the Celtics host the Jazz at the Garden tonight. In the forecast, sunny mid to upper 50s today, 54 right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Houston Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We have a couple of programming notes, and I'm going to repeat them. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. We're going to be joined by the Mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, from 11 to 12 for another edition of Ask the Mayor, taking our questions and yours. And same deal on Wednesday, when we'll have both the Governor, Maura Healey, and the head of the MBTA, Phil Eng, is going to be with us. Same deal. Our questions and your questions, but we're not going to be back at the library on Friday because the library is closed. Hello again, Jim.
Wasn't Phil Lang like the most popular? He's not a politician, the most popular public figure in
Everybody loves
Massachusetts
him.
recently?
He's great.
By the way, I just want to do one thing also from the end of the conversation we just had with Ayanna Pressley, because we ran out of time because of the news. She mentioned at the end Flash Wiley. And for those of you who have not spent time in Boston, Flash Wiley was this legendary black Boston lawyer, civil rights leader who had his hands in everything that matters for his lifetime of incredible work. And there was a memorial service last week where Congresswoman Pressley was there, the mayor was there, the senators were there. And part of it was playing some Motown music, which apparently was his, his energy producer. And that's
larger than life guy.
That's why the Congresswoman both mentioned Flash Wiley and mentioned Motown. So if you missed that, that was the deal. For over 80 years, Jewish Vocational Services has offered education, training, and support for job seekers, helping people from diverse communities achieve the American dream. Unlike our current president, JVS Boston sees the value in immigration and in refugees and immigrants building their careers and lives in Massachusetts. Joining us in the studio is Kira Khazatsky, who's the president and CEO of JVS Boston. It's great to have you. Thanks for being here,
Thank you for having me.
And Dawn Hayes is the major gifts officer at JVS. She's going to hate this, but we love this. We thought you might remember her from Lottery Live. Here it is.
Welcome to Lottery Live on board. It's time for Megabucks. Tonight's jackpot is estimated at $3 million.
$2.5 million.
$15 million. Let's take a look and see if you'll be our next Megabucks millionaire.
She's turning 9 colors when we play that, but we love it. By the way, she is featured in this terrific documentary that Ian Coss from our newsroom put together, Scratch and Win, about the history of the Massachusetts Lottery. You should check it out. Dawn, it's great to see you. And Kira, it's great to have you. Thanks so much for being here.
Quick correction.
Yeah.
I'm actually the vice president of philanthropy now. I got a bit of a raise last
Congratulations.
Yes.
Since you saw us, you noticed the connection?
We know a good thing when we see it.
Okay.
Great to have you both.
Thank you.
So Kira, elaborate on what Jim said for people that don't know about JVS. Tell us more.
Yeah. So thank you for this opportunity.
Our pleasure. Yeah.
I'm really excited to share the history of JVS because I think when you hear it, you will see a lot of commonality, unfortunately, with our inception story and the situation that we find ourselves in today worldwide. The JVS inception story starts in 1938. There were two things that were happening in the world at that time: the rise of fascism in Europe and the Great Depression in the United States. And our founder, a young Jewish graduate student named Ida Hughes, looked out into the world and said, oh my God, so much is on fire. I can't do everything, but I can do something. And I believe that something is going to be to help the people that are both coming to our shores, fleeing violence and death, and trying to rebuild their lives here on the shores of Boston, and the people that were already here that were really struggling to feed their families. And essentially what Ida decided to do was to help people get the skills that they need to step into a competitive job market, be they immigrants or refugees or folks that were struggling here. It is now almost 87, 88 years later, and JVS is the largest regional workforce development organization on the East Coast. We serve over 10,000 job seekers a year from all over the world and Boston. And essentially the way that I talk about how JVS wants to impact the world is that we want to work with people that are at a particular disadvantage in getting in and thriving in the job market to do so successfully.
You know, if you split those 80-some years roughly in half, you have a personal history with JVS. Can you describe that to us?
I do. Thank you, Jim, for the question. So I myself am a refugee from the former Soviet Union. My family and I came here in 1980. And those of us that are immigrants, those of us that are living in immigrant families or are associated with immigrant communities will recognize what I'm about to say, which is that both my parents went through a very predictable, deep depression upon coming here to the United States. They picked up and left everything in the former Soviet Union for one reason and one reason only, and that was me, their only child. The level of anti-Semitism at that time in the former Soviet Union, they felt was unsustainable, and they were very worried about my safety, which is very typical of a refugee story. So my parents brought us here for the mere opportunity that they thought that I would have that I would not have in the former Soviet Union. And immigrants tell and retell their immigrant story all the time. And that's how they assimilate this very traumatic shift in their family history. And for my mother in particular, JVS had a very prominent position in her immigrant story. And she talked about the first day that she came into JVS, depressed, terrified, confused, lost, and thought that that was the first moment since coming to the United States that she could envision something other than the darkness that she was feeling at that time. And so, as you can imagine, 40 plus years later, for me to sit at the helm of this incredible organization that helped to stand up my family in this country is literally the privilege of
Was she
my life.
alive to see this or not?
She was not alive to see me become the CEO, although I will tell you she advocated for it relentlessly until the day she passed. But my mother did volunteer for JVS throughout her life. Went to every gala that she could. She was a big supporter.
How'd you get involved in this operation, Dawn?
It was a blessing, actually. Previously, I've been in nonprofits ever since I did the lottery.
And I didn't know you did the lottery. Is that true?
I know. Hey, it's the best thing I ever did, apparently. So I've worked at several different nonprofits in the New England area, and I got an opportunity to move over to JVS, and I'm very moved by the mission. I'm moved by Kira's leadership. Honestly, I'm here because of Kira, still here. I've been there for almost 2 years now and don't have any plans of moving.
You know, you said you're the something of philanthropy.
Vice President.
And unfortunately, you can't take credit for the following. JVS is one of the recipients of Mackenzie Scott.
Yes.
Deciding,
$7 million.
I believe, with no contact before, and all of a sudden you find out $7 million. And I hate to reference her this way, but she's the former wife of Jeff Bezos. I don't mean because of being anti-Bezos, which we are, but I mean, except when we're shopping, unfortunately, but because she's done incredible things. She doesn't let people know in advance. All of a sudden you find out X numbers of dollars are coming. No strings, no nothing,
No
right?
strings. She is amazing. We are incredibly grateful. We got the call and we just did what they asked, and that was just when I was starting at JVS.
Hell of a start. What does that mean?
Is it she calling up and say hi? I've got $7 million.
She's not a part of it.
Okay.
She has people.
Okay.
And what happens? Who do they call and what?
So, yeah, it's a really fascinating experience. They actually call you to tell you that there is a potential donor that's interested in the organization. You don't know who it is. You don't know what they're interested in. And they ask you for information. A lot of it is about your actual measurable impact. I think that what she does is she has hired people to do some backgrounding on highly effective nonprofit organizations that achieve the things that they set out to achieve. They ask you a number of questions that you're sort of answering. It's a little bit of like if anyone sat and had to defend their dissertation. It's a little bit of like defending your dissertation.
But how do you find out you got the $7 million?
So I want to tell you this story is that I found out while sitting in my house in, my sweatpants and got a phone call that said, we're about to share information with you that has to stay confidential for several weeks.
Several weeks?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
I know.
What, you're getting $7 million? Or did they tell you that?
And I want to tell you that I was so flabbergasted both at the news that this was Mackenzie Scott and at the enormous gift that I sort of didn't. I lost my bearings a little bit in that conversation and had to literally ask them to repeat the number.
Wow.
Because it was the single largest gift we have ever received.
And one last thing about this, we're not going to spend the whole time on this, but it is pretty incredible. Unlike a lot of foundation grants, we have to report constantly, fill out form, and I'm not disparaging that. Obviously, they want to know what your results are. You get the check, and
that's right.
They
and
trust
essentially, that's right. Their philosophy is we do the backgrounding, we find out about the impact and operations of this agency, and then we trust the leadership of that agency to do what they need to do to continue to impact the world.
I want to talk more about fundraising, Dawn, with you for a second. We were talking about this morning. I'm not clear, but I'm sure you know how it plays out. When there's an administration in Washington that is anti-immigrant, anti-DEI, and I would argue, and I'm obviously not putting words in either your mouths, anti the core mission that people like you are dedicating your lives to, does that help you raise money, or does it scare people off from donating to an organization?
The folks who are interested in the work of JVS are fired up and are giving more. Actually.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, I don't feel that it's scaring people away because the people who don't like immigrants aren't going to give to us anyway.
Anyway, okay.
You know.
So, and can you explain?
Hold on for a second, though, because it's what we learned in this election is it's not just the government. I mean, there's a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment all over the country. That was a big issue in the election. So, and you can see where if someone is struggling themselves, you talked about people that are struggling here, and they read stories about people getting housing, people getting help with jobs, and they think, well, what about me? But you are talking about also helping people that are struggling here, not just...
Absolutely. And I would say, again, think about, I ask this question in many rooms. How many of us love looking for a job? There's not a single hand that ever goes up. And then I say, let's overlay that with a particular number of barriers. So immigrants and refugees, for sure. But people with disabilities, folks that were caregivers for many, many years who have, a huge gap in their resume, young people that aren't taken seriously, older people that aren't taken seriously. Those are our people. Our people is the untapped workforce that is actually and is the engine of the Commonwealth.
Do you go, I believe you go into some of the shelters and work with people, is that correct? We do. Okay, so, and Mar Healy has told us how they have tried to expedite the work permit process within the confines of what the feds, even under Joe Biden, allowed them to do. So could you describe, Kira, what do? You enter a place, there's obviously somebody who's dying to work because nobody wants to live there, want to support their family and that sort of thing. We also know there are twice as many jobs available as there are unemployed people in Massachusetts. So the need is immense. What do you do for those, for and with those people?
So there are several things that we do. The first thing that we have to do is help somebody understand what the job search culture in America and particularly in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is. What does that look like? It doesn't look the same in Haiti. It doesn't look the same in Venezuela, Cuba, and all of these other countries. The second thing you're doing is you're evaluating their work history against the opportunities that are here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And then if there is a gap between those two, so what you're able to do, what your skill set is.
And what the need is.
And what the need on the business side is. And so this is exactly what our founder did initially. Really three things. One is people need to be able to speak a language that is prominent in their workplace. People need specific job skills if they don't already bring them, which, by the way, many of them do. We're not necessarily creating these amazing people. We're just helping them connect their experience, their wisdom, their knowledge with the economy of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
We're talking to Kira Khazatsky and Dawn Hayes from JVS Boston. I want to stay with just 1 second. Do you, in most cases, I know you partner with specific employers. When you see that person at a shelter or wherever you encounter them, are you attempting to fill that job, the specific job at a specific place, as opposed to...
So we do both. Okay. So the way that I talk about the two sides of that equation is that, the job seekers are the mission. They're the reason why the organization exists. Yeah. But the employers are the customer. Yeah. They are essentially the end user. So if we don't understand the pain that those businesses are feeling, the skills that they need, their workflow, and what makes them successful, I can't help my clients be successful. And what I would say that JVS does incredibly well is also that social capital. I mean, we have teams of people that are going out and developing relationships across the business community so that we can be better stewards both for our job seekers and for the businesses, because it is the business success that is going to ensure economic viability for our clients.
In some cases, Dawn Hayes, people that come here from other countries are highly skilled, but the regulations in the United States prevent these people from working in those jobs here. I mean, this is talking about highly skilled physicians. We're just talking about the shortage of physicians here, and they've loosened those regulations. How much of that is a factor, just the difference in the rules between here and another country?
Well, it can be very impactful. Can you imagine being a doctor, say, in Iran, and you come here and you can't be a doctor anymore? You may be working as a pharmacy assistant at CVS or someplace. So it absolutely is an issue, and it does happen.
Yeah, but so what is the problem there? Is it the AMA rules or the hospital rules or the federal rules? I mean, what is the problem?
Well, maybe, Kira, you can speak to that a little bit better, but
I think so. There's a multitude of issues. One of the biggest is language.
Yeah.
And so the things that workforce development organizations often are doing is delivering this immersive English learning experience. We're trying to expedite that language proficiency to a point where people can they can't leverage those skills and those credentials until they're able to actually work in English in most cases. And the other is, yes, of course, it's, the fact that some credentialing from some countries is recognized. And again, I want to be clear that, the credentialing is important, and it is important to understand whether a nursing degree from Russia, let's say, is equivalent to a nursing degree here. What I think probably isn't necessary in most cases is for people to have to start from scratch, where you don't get any credit for being a respiratory therapist for 20 years in Haiti. You really are almost starting like a freshman in college, which these folks are clearly not.
What percentage of the people you help care are immigrants, by the way? What percentage?
I would say depends on the year.
Yeah.
And those numbers obviously are about to unfortunately go down. But I would say any given year, 60 to 70% of the people we serve come from other
So
countries.
can we talk about state of mind? When we were talking to Ayanna, actually it wasn't with Congresswoman Pressley, it was Congressman Lynch earlier in the show about the morale that federal workers must feel when everywhere you turn you're being crushed, whether your union's being taken away at the TSA or you don't know if you're going to lose a job Friday night via an email kind of thing. When people came to this country because they obviously felt they were safer and they have greater opportunity for their families, when they wake up and see that the leader of the country thinks they're all rapists and murderers, what does that do to them in your experience and their excitement or desire to be in this place and you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I do.
What's the impact?
Yeah, the impact, I have to tell you that I think many of our clients are just so stunned because they feel like they have done everything that they were told that they have to do. They have followed the rules. They have used the process. They have waited for their work authorization. They have gone through the training that they were told is necessary for them to be a contributor into this society. And what I can tell you is like the level of fear, sadness, and anxiety is palpable. I mean, you can feel it in the building.
How much harder does it make your job? I mean,
look, it's you're now holding all of this for people. And I want to tell you, we have people who have been, on the, temporary protective status.
Yeah. Haitians,
for
Venezuelans
10 years.
who are about to lose
They're
it.
leading departments in hospitals. They're leading work in they're some of the best employees that these organizations have that are not going to work because they are so terrified that they are going to be removed from their families.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Speaking of terrified, and obviously I'm not talking about your individual specific employers because I don't know about them, and obviously we don't want to disparage them because they're hiring the people that you're working with. I know I speak for Marjorie. We're both stunned how silent the employer community in this country has been, who are so dependent upon immigrants who are dying to work, who are being terrorized by, and since the Republican Party, even with Donald Trump, is a party that likes to think that it and business are locked at the hip. Why do you think there's not been, where they haven't been more vocal? I know it's not a monolith, but why has the business community that's so dependent on immigrant labor not been more vocal?
So first and foremost, I have to tell you that I think the business community is certainly not the only community. I mean, I think we should remember it's only been a few weeks. The silence is a little bit of a stunned silence. And I do think that they are trying to internally understand this impact. And I do think that they want to be able to make a really good argument and a really good case. And I do think that there are internal conversations happening right now that eventually that the business community will find its voice. Because I want to say this, Jim, and I know I'm preaching to the choir. There are no other people coming in behind these people. So these jobs that are going to be unfilled, should everything that is being promised play out, there is no backfill for these organizations. And so I think that the stunned silence is almost like trying to understand everything that is coming at them. So the job seekers are stunned. The businesses are stunned, and I think we're all trying to make our way back to each other within this new environment that everybody is trying to decipher.
So, Dawn Hayes, if people want more information, want to explore possible giving, maybe volunteer opportunities, how do they go about this?
They can check out our website at jvs/-boston.org, and lots of information there.
Great.
I want to say we have several nice texts, so I'll read a couple of them. I will always be thankful for JVS matching our law firm administration position with an adult with disabilities, a perfect match for many years. Thank you for all you do. And then Denise from Dennis says she worked on a grant helping people find jobs. She worked with, I won't get their whole name, but Sally and Ruth from JVS. And she called JVS a great organization with an even greater staff.
Thank you
very much. Awesome.
And if there are other listeners that are interested in getting involved, I'm telling you, you've never met a more amazing group of people than the group of people that we serve. They really, truly are the best of America, and I welcome you all to come and see for yourself. Turn off the TV. Come spend some time.
Come take a tour
with these amazing people.
Take a tour with me. I'd be happy to give you a tour.
With Dawn Hayes?
Yeah, I will. I'm
Dawn
serious.
Hayes.
And we won't charge you a dime.
Free. Yeah. Will you sign autographs? That's
whatever it takes.
Wait a second. Did we tell the story on air? Did we tell this? We didn't. Oh, I forgot about this.
What?
Before you go, Jamie, if I get this wrong, Jamie is our leader of our show here. Please correct me. Get by the mic. When you were a little boy, is this right? Jamie was a little boy. How old were you, Jamie? 10. You said to who in your family? To his grandmother, that his goal in life was to do what? Do you have any idea what the end of the sentence is?
Marry Dawn Hayes.
To marry Dawn Hayes.
I've heard this from multitudes.
I love you, Jamie.
It's not too late, Jamie. You never know. You know what I mean?
There you go.
Yeah.
Jamie, get in line. That's what I guess we have to say.
It's great to see you both.
Thank you very
so much.
Thank you
really
so much. Stay in touch with us. We appreciate it.
We've been speaking with Kira Khazatsky. She is from JVS, as well as Dawn Hayes, who just got a big promotion. She's now the vice president of philanthropy over there. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all the work you do.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Okay, coming back after a quick break. It's really embarrassing that we're going back to this again.
No, it's not. Not
but
to me.
usually we talk about who was the a-hole on Thursday. Today we're talking about it because daylight saving time yet again, and we're going to talk about an a-hole story having to do with that. A girlfriend is annoyed that her boyfriend won't update his car's digital clock when the time changes. If he knows what time it really is, why does it matter? Or is this just a cause for a big breakup? Who is the jerk here? You can weigh in next. Is it the girlfriend, the boyfriend, or Jim for insisting that we do this story yet again today? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Judy Ewell in for Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, Harvard is implementing a hiring freeze as it deals with uncertainty about federal funding. Cambridge is starting a new program where residents can get free bikes. Also, scientists who figured out how to restore movement to people who are paralyzed have realized that picking up a cup is easier when you can feel it. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Join GBH at our Brighton studios for Stories from the Stage. You'll hear entertaining, inspirational stories while you enjoy drinks with friends. Join our studio audience at one of our upcoming shows. Tickets and more info at gbh.org/events.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And McLean Middleton. For over 100 years, McLean Middleton has been dedicated to serving its clients and its community, offering guidance through the complexities of today's legal system, with locations in Woburn and Boston. McLean.com. And Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations. And the Skating Club of Boston, presenting the ISU World Figure Skating Championships with over 300 athletes competing at TD Garden March 25th through 30th for the title of World Champion. Tickets at isuworlds2025.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow, 11 to 12. Mayor Wu's there for an hour. 11 to 12 on Wednesday at the library is an hour of the governor. And in the 1 o'clock hour, you can ask questions for the GM of the T. Phil Lang will join us. We are not at the library this Friday because it is closed. I just want to add one thing to the Jamie story about telling his grandmother when he was 10 that he wanted to marry Dawn Hayes. This part of the story, which I forgot, is not believable, but if you know Jamie, he's a truth teller.
He's a truth teller.
The night that Dawn Hayes is on, he's having dinner with his sister, and he says, guess who was on the show today and who I got to meet? And his sister swears she wasn't listening to the show, had no idea, without missing a beat, his sister says, Dawn Hayes. And so obviously you know what kind of impact Dawn had on his childhood. For the rest of the show, it's a special Monday edition of Am I the A-Hole with a certain daylight saving time twist. It's all about the manual clocks we have to change in order to stay up to date. Your oven, your microwave, the old clocks around your house, your watch, and the dastardly one in your car if your car is not relatively new. Today's prompt comes to us from Reddit. User Layla Luna 561, whose boyfriend never changes the clock in his car for daylight saving because, quote, he knows what time it is. So is she the jerk for insisting her boyfriend's clocks are set to the right time for 182 out of the 360? Well, actually isn't that number, but for daylight saving time. Or is he the jerk for insisting everybody follow along with whatever his time is? It's his car. After all, the number's 877-301-8970 is the number. And by the way, in your own life, is there anybody who out of stubbornness refuses to spring ahead or fall back and knowing that the switch in the other direction is going to come?
So who's the jerk here?
Who's the jerk in this situation?
Yes.
100% him. Change
100% her.
Are you serious, by the way?
Yeah.
100% him. Unless he's never, no one's ever going to be in the car, that is perfectly fine. If someone's in the car, what's not discombobulating? Yeah, discombobulating, is it? To not know what time it is, and how disrespectful and rude to somebody riding in your car.
The fact that this woman is writing to Reddit complaining about fact that her boyfriend doesn't change the clock in his car. Who cares?
Excuse me, I am talking to the woman who is the worst person with time on the planet.
Well, I'm not
if
that
you got
bad.
in the car, wouldn't you look at the clock, even if it was still under standard time, and you'd think it was the time it was?
I would not, Jim, because like every other single person in the United States of America, and probably in the world, I would pick up my phone and see the correct time.
Why would you look at it if it turns out the clock's right in front of you in the car?
Because you would suspect that they were an hour off, and you would change it. This is like a big deal in their relationship. I think she just drives in the car, and if he wants to leave his clock at the same time.
I didn't know in advance you were going to take that.
Listen to this. Here's some DA from Bellerica. I never change the clock anywhere, apparently. It only flips again in a few months, so why bother?
Okay, let me be nice to that texter. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So you're not going to change it because you're going to have to change it back. It takes like 15 seconds every few months and then 15 seconds another time. You can't deal with that. By the way, here's an anonymous person who's on your side too.
That's right.
I love this line. My car, my clock.
Absolutely.
Most passengers spend the entire drive playing with their phone. That has a clock. If I had a passenger also complain about my clock, I'd set it to a different arbitrary time whenever they were in the car.
I mean, if this is your biggest problem, that your boyfriend doesn't change the clock in his car, I think
She didn't say it's the biggest problem.
She's
troubles by it.
Reddit.
She should be troubled.
Yeah, she's saying, is
Are you just doing this because you like to be at a different position than I do?
Am I the a-hole for telling him he's lazy?
He is
and
lazy.
that it's crazy that he doesn't think it's important to have a correct clock for half the year? I mean, there's something wrong with this woman. No question about it.
If the clocks in the studio were at the wrong time because Bill or John or whoever didn't want to do the clocks, what would you say to them? It's no problem.
I would recall,
because I have a phone.
I would recall that it was the wrong time.
Okay.
I think I could handle it, Jim.
Okay,
Of
it
course,
took us
maybe I
about 30 seconds. Judith, I always thought it was unfair to always say that Jim is the a-hole, but today Jim is the a-hole.
Well, that's the other point, of course, that
What
he
is it?
is because of. Did we do this for 20 minutes this morning? We did this for 20 minutes this morning.
Actually, it was 24 minutes this morning.
Okay, and Jim, like a little crybaby, insisted that we do it again at the end of the show.
I wouldn't say I was a crybaby. I would say there were a couple of angles
Tiny tears.
on daylight saving time, and I'm pursuing both angles. Okay, let's go. Let's start in Somerville.
Okay.
You have somebody, or you want to start with Herb in Somerville?
Let's start with Herb in Somerville.
Who's the
Herb.
a-hole, Herb?
Hi.
Hi.
I think the woman is a bit of it, but she doesn't know what to do because I think the guy has probably tried to reset it and can't manage it.
Oh no.
I've had big struggles with my clocks, but I read the manual and reset them, but it isn't easy.
Well, can I give you a little hint, Herb? Instead of reading the manual, when the button says set clock, press the button. How about that for starters? You with me?
I love it.
Thank you very
I love
much.
it. Yeah.
Herb, keep trying. We appreciate your call. Thank you very much. In this case, to be clear, the guy isn't the problem is not inability to figure out how to change the clock. The problem is he doesn't want to change the clock because he's an a-hole.
Reddit if he's lazy or crazy. Okay. The girl is wrong here, says a texter. Why does she care what's going on in her boyfriend's car? If that's his choice, so be it. If he's late for anything because of his choice, it's on him. She needs to calm down and not be such a control freak.
By the way, she is not freaking out.
She's a control freak.
She types...
Absolutely.
You see what Anonymous says? This debate again? And you know what the response to that is?
Make it stop.
That was Mary. Where is she from? Rentham? Thank you, Aiden.
She's got a great Boston accent, though, doesn't she?
She was fabulous. She called at the top of the show because we're discussing daylight saving time 2 times today because everybody except Marjorie is as into it as I am. There you go. No, it's true, by the way.
I'm into Am I the
Did you get
A-hole?
text? Marjorie got, she won't say this on the air. On Friday, Marjorie got text complaining that we hadn't done daylight
That's
saving
right.
time on Friday.
Oh, we got many.
When are we going to do it?
We got many texts. Not
Okay,
just one.
fine.
There were
So
many
there you
texts
are.
because they got used to the moldy chestnuts, Jim, that we do over and over and over
Here's
again.
Anonymous. I suspect the clock is the least of her
Exactly.
problems. The car is most likely filled with moldy chestnuts, and he drives in the bus lane. Thank you very much. Figure that one out.
Very
if you can't,
clever.
you don't listen to
Carrie
the show.
from Mansfield. What do you think, Carrie?
Hi, Carrie. Welcome.
Thank you. This is just too funny. My mom used to do that in the kitchen clock and on her watch.
She'd keep it.
And I always wondered what is going on? Why does she do this? And she said, well, I don't have to change it. I know what time it is.
Exactly.
And so as far as this boyfriend, and I guess I figured that people just have their quirks, and that was one of her quirks, right? So as far as this boyfriend issue, it sounds like he only doesn't change the clock in the car. He's in the car a lot more than she is, I'm assuming. So let him do what he wants in the car.
Exactly.
Carrie, you're a much more tolerant
Absolutely.
person than I. Thank you for your call.
This is from Jen walking along the Merrimack
This is
River.
an excellent
She
one.
says, with his logic, it would seem that you would never change your underwear because you're just going to have to change it again.
I agree totally with that. Anonymous says, just pulled into my driveway. It's 9:53. Could care less. Well, I think there's a bigger issue there, if you know what I mean. 87. By the way, if you have your clock, here's another problem. I hate to dig into the weeds or whatever that expression is. If your clock in your car has one time unchanged, and I'm assuming this her boyfriend or former boyfriend, I don't know,
that she's calling lazy
has
and
a cell
crazy.
phone. Do you think most people can deal with the fact that one time device has one time and another time device has another time? I would say no. No.
You don't think people can handle that?
No, I
Jim?
don't. You could not handle it. Do you agree you could not handle it?
I absolutely think.
I think
you
not.
go to your phone because you think the phone is most accurate. That's where you look at the time.
Yeah.
And if the car,
I have 3 words
clock-
for you. Y2K.
Y2K.
Oh, that never happened, did it?
No, it never.
And those aren't 3 words either, actually.
It never happened. That's
Okay.
right. Oh, listen to this. Since BPR has to censor Am I the A-hole, Jim and Marjorie may be interested in the alternative subreddit called Am I the Butt Face?
Okay.
We'll have to check that one out. Jordan from Cambridge. Thank
Hello,
you for
Jordan.
calling.
How are you?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Excellent.
I gotta say, and this could be in a tribute to why both of you are a really good team on this broadcast. Is opposites attract. This guy sounds pretty chill, and she kind of sounds like a bit of anxiety takes over her life here. And time is relative. We're all going to be living on our own accord. So I think if you just kind of take a step back and your boyfriend sounds chill, just relax, girls, go for the ride.
Wait, don't go away, Jordan.
Who is cool and laid back, and who is the control freak in this duo?
Oh, guys, now I'm on the spot here. Come on.
What do you mean everybody is living on their own accord? What does that mean?
Doesn't want to answer.
Time is relative, man. It's all arbitrary, right?
That's right. That's right.
Jordan, that was a good one. That was a
Sarah.
really good one.
Jim
Call
is
us
the control.
again. Thank
Jim
you.
is the control freak. I think
I'm
it's
not
fair
a
to say.
control freak. I
would
like
say you are.
detail.
You like detail.
I'm into detail, and I have good executive function. Would you agree that your executive function is low performing? Would you agree with that? What are you laughing at?
I do have a lot of problems with a lot of things, like losing everything and being disorganized.
By the way, it's not even a criticism.
Mispronouncing everything. I have a lot of issues.
I would argue I could have a friend who has a car who doesn't do the time thing, and I'd be fine. I would be angry, but I'd be fine. You are not the kind of person who can deal with that. I'm sorry. And this woman is probably like you, and who is a little disorganized. Would you say you're a little disorganized?
I'm a little disorganized.
Little disorganized.
Oh, here's our colleague Azita.
No, it's not Azita.
It's not?
Oh, it is?
It is.
Oh,
I
is.
refuse to change any manual clocks because I like to pretend I live in a sane place that abides by permanent daylight saving. It is a small price to pay for my happiness, and Jim better not call me the a-hole.
Never. At least not on the air. Azita, thank you for
the other text?
No.
I am not a control freak. Biggest lie of the year.
Who said that?
By
Me?
Jim Browdy.
I'm not a I'm okay. I'm okay.
Okay, let's just move on. Alita from New York.
So
Hi,
Lorraine
Alita.
in New Hampshire, before you go,
Okay.
Alita, Lorraine in New Hampshire says, please stop with the daylight saving time. Please call Cy Montgomery and see if you can get her on for the next couple of minutes. They'll try. Thank you, Lorraine.
Alita in New York. Thank
Hi,
you for
Alita.
calling.
Hi.
Hello, I used to live in Rhode Island. Love you guys. Now I'm here in New York. I still watch.
Oh, thank you very much.
Oh, no, you guys are wonderful.
Thanks.
Listen, I don't change any clocks in this apartment. Nothing. The daylight savings time is ridiculous. All my clocks stay the same. I don't do anything until the fall, which you don't have to do. Just think of that. And you know what? If you want the time, look on your phone. Look here, look there. I don't care. I don't change the time at all.
There you go.
There, Jim.
So that
So
would
there, Jim.
So that would make the girlfriend the a-hole in that situation. And I'm with you 100%, Alita. Thank you very much for that
Alita,
call.
thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
Okay, 877-301-8970. We're discussing Am I the A-hole, the daylight saving edition?
It's not Thursday. People may think
That's
it's
right.
Thursday. It's not
And
Thursday.
the issue is that this woman takes the time to type a question into Reddit asking if her boyfriend is lazy and crazy because he doesn't change the clock in his car for daylight saving time. She's very upset about this. This could be a deal breaker. I mean, really.
Did she say it's a deal breaker?
Well, if she's so worried about this,
No,
you can only
excuse
imagine
me.
what
You're
else
not
she's
answering
worried
my
about.
question. Does she say it's a deal breaker?
She does not say.
Maybe she's sitting
calling
around
him
having a drink,
lazy,
and saying, "I'm going to type this
and
thing."
Crazy.
Well, you don't know that it's a deal breaker. What you're doing is attempting to get people to your side by making her more of a drama queen than she actually is.
I
She's
would
just
say
concerned.
If this is something you would write to Reddit about, Jim, it shows a certain over-involvement in the clock.
Okay, now I want to read you a note from Jamie, who theoretically runs our show, and tell me if you would be concerned that someone writes you a note like this. He quotes me saying, "I'm not a control freak." Well, that's fine, because I did say that. And then he goes on to say, says the man who requests different size clamps for each packet of the show.
right.
That part is true. And I do like my sandwiches at the Newsfeed Cafe cut into fours with boxes, just in case I choose to take some portion
right.
of it home.
And last week,
And occasionally multiple boxes. That is also true.
last week you wanted it cut into sixes.
I did.
You did.
And by the way, does that cause anybody any harm to cut it into sixes?
It's a lot, Jim.
And by the way,
Most
when they
people have
refused
them
to
cut
do
in
it,
half.
when Jamie refused to make the request, I went on to Reddit and I said, "Who is the a-hole, Jamie or me?" Everybody said he was the a-hole.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, 877-301-8970. If you just tuned in, here's the deal. Well, why don't you describe what happened?
I just described it.
Describe it again.
The girlfriend is upset.
She's
because
upset.
Her boyfriend
It's not a deal breaker. Don't say that
does
again.
not change the clock for daylight saving time in his car.
Yeah.
In his car.
His car.
She said it's been a couple of weeks since daylight saving time began. Actually, it's been a couple of days. Maybe she wrote this a little while ago.
Maybe.
And I told him this was insane. And he said, why? I know it's 6:30, not 7:30. I asked him if he was ever going to change his clock, and he said no, he doesn't do that. Wow. So, am I the a-hole, she asked, for telling him he's lazy and crazy?
The answer is no.
Because he doesn't change the clock.
Okay, fine. I mean, and the answer is he is an a-hole, and you are not. You are not an a-hole, young woman or woman, for calling him out. I think it's good, and she shows a lot of courage and fortitude, which I really appreciate.
Dee on the road. What do you think,
Hello,
Dee?
Hey, this I think is one of your best shows ever, guys. Truly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So here's the deal. I don't like to name call, but I got to check a lot of the options.
No.
I think the presenting issue is never the real issue. So I would advise both of them to maybe keep it at boyfriend and girlfriend for a good long time, or perhaps just do whatever they're going to do and have a good lawyer in their pocket, because this will not last if they're fighting over the trivial.
Exactly.
That is generally Marjorie's analysis. That's very helpful.
The presenting issue. So that means, what do you mean by that, Dee?
So typically somebody would fight over how you squeeze the toothpaste.
Yeah.
Well, that's real easy. Both of you get your own tube of toothpaste.
Yeah.
It's easy. About the toilet seat. Granted, the toilet seat should be down, but then put the cover down. Everyone has to put the cover down.
Wow.
I just have basic rules.
Now, are you a shrink or a therapist, I believe? What do you do for...
I'm divorced.
You're divorced. Same thing.
Okay.
Dee.
So was it the toilet seat that put you over the edge, Dee, or what was it? Or the toothpaste roll?
Good.
What was it?
I can't say, we're still actively in court.
Oh, okay.
Let us know how it turns out. Thanks, Dee, for bringing us into it. We appreciate it.
Here's an easy solution. Put a piece of black electrical tape over the clock.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Here's another one.
By the way, can I return? I'm sorry.
Don't you think it's strange that Jim never seems to be able to figure out who the real a-hole is?
Oh, you mean I get it wrong?
Yes.
Well, that's the one person's opinion. Here's an anonymous texter. Wait. Jim gets his sandwiches cut for him like a king. By the way, Jamie does not cut them. Let's be clear. At the Newsfeed Cafe, where they cut as part of their function, I occasionally ask. Now, it is true, if they cut them incorrectly, I do ask Jamie to recut them. That I forgot about that. I want to be honest with people. For example, the other day,
they need to be heated up.
It was just cut into two.
I want to make sure the cheese is melted.
And I don't want to say I was furious, but I was unhappy. And I said, Jamie, do what you think is right. And he said, what would that be? I said, figure it out, my friend. And he did. And he cut the two halves into two additional.
And you didn't mention that.
What's that?
You would want him to cut the crust off like a little kid.
You've never done that? You've never asked them to cut the crust off?
No, I've not.
It's hard on a ciabatta. I found it. To cut the crust off on a ciabatta is really...
Okay, Phoebe in Alston.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Phoebe.
Hi, Phoebe. How you doing?
Hi. Are you ready for a weird question?
Yes.
I hope so.
What if neither of them's an a-hole?
Aren't you ecumenical?
Why do you think that?
What if... Well, because... you know how sometimes you might have a friend who had something that bothers you or does something that you bothers you?
Yeah.
And at first you might be really irritated and have a conversation that gets nowhere.
Yeah.
But eventually, has it ever happened to you? And your friend might be embarrassed that they have something or other that they're not really too fond of, you know, about them, like freckles on their nose.
Yeah.
But eventually, you know how the funkiest things that irritate you about your friends can become the things that make them absolutely adorable to you,
You know,
eventually?
I thought your point was ridiculous at first, Phoebe. When I thought about it, of all the things that Marjorie does that drive me nuts, I have chosen in an ecumenical way to overlook them. So you make a spectacularly cogent point. Phoebe, thank you. That was an
Okay.
excellent thought thing there. Thank you for your
Okay. The economy is tanking, and we are ruminating about clocks, says the texter.
Well, by the way, we
is the
talk about
economy
the
tanking
economy.
more dramatically
No,
today?
actually, we'll tell you what the Dow Jones...
Is it down?
We'll tell you in a couple of
dramatically?
seconds. Well, I think we can keep doing the show while we figure that out, don't you think
Yeah,
so?
well, we hope it's going to come back
Do you want
up
it?
at some
Well, it
point.
always comes back up, but it's unclear how fast. You know what, by the way, he also acknowledged there might be a recession yesterday. No pain. Everybody's going to get rich right away. Minor disturbance. We can all handle the disturbance, particularly if we're billionaires. 2, now there might be a recession.
Here's one. Whose name is on the title of the car? They are not the a-hole. The one whose name is not on the title doesn't need to waste her energy telling the title holder what to do.
I have no idea what that means. Yeah, let me
Person
just
owns
say-
the car.
Well, that's ridiculous. That's like saying you can be rude to anybody because it's your house or
Do you know
your
what
silverware.
I
or-
used to do. Lots of people used to do this.
What's
If they
that?
had a problem being late for things,
Yeah.
if it's really
Put your clock ahead.
You put your clock ahead. It doesn't work because you always know that it's ahead. I tried that for
What
years.
does that have to do with this, Marjorie?
Well, it's being fooled by the clock. Is what it has to do with this.
And you're contending you wouldn't be fooled by the clock ever if you got in someone else's car, and you wouldn't be guided
not by an
a
hour.
clock staring
not,
at
no,
you.
Not
No,
by an
it's-
hour.
well-
Everybody has a phone. Listen to this.
What?
We are learning a little too much about Jim, aren't we?
With the sandwich thing?
Cutting off the crust.
Do you how many?
Cutting off the crust.
How
cutting
many?
it to
How
four.
many? By the way, I don't get that. Was a joke.
Three
the
different
crust part.
boxes. One section in each box.
How
four
many?
different
How
boxes.
many How many segments do you like your sandwiches cut in at the New Street Cafe?
I cut them in half, Jim, and it's fine.
Can I tell you something? By the way, this is the difference between me and Marjorie. Marjorie probably wants them cut in fourths, but her attitude is it's an imposition.
It's an imposition.
To ask someone nicely
That's right.
to cut your sandwich into 4 pieces.
That is correct.
If you want me
it
to
is an
ask
imposition.
tomorrow-
Why don't you chew it into 4 pieces? You can do it that way.
I'm serious.
Bethany in Attleboro. What do you think, Bethany?
Yeah, go ahead, Bethany. Go ahead.
This is always my favorite topic.
It's
of
Marjorie's
the
too,
year.
actually. It's Marjorie's. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I would say that it's not her car, and she needs to chill out. And I don't understand why it bothers her so much. And
Exactly.
I also grew up in a house where my mom always put the clock 20 minutes ahead, so no one was late.
Yeah.
So I kind of have more of a time is relative kind of attitude.
Yeah, okay. Now, Bethany, did it fool you, or after you realized it was 20 minutes late that it didn't have any impact anymore?
It always continued to have impacts because you forget the first second and then like you're rushing and then you go, oh my God, I did have time, but it did work. But I do think my mom was kind of a control freak for doing that to all of us because she felt we were all late and she was never late.
Now, Bethany, you're obviously one of our smartest callers today. How many, if you had a BLT, how many segments would you have it cut into? If you, what's your preferred number of segments?
I will admit, like a BLT or a squishier sandwich, I do go for 4.
Hey, man, there we go. Need I say more? Bethany, thank you very much.
Here's one
for the
more
call.
text
4
over.
segments.
Does Jim always refer to himself as the talent when discussing the show?
I can answer that. I don't, but I require that others do. Is there a problem? What's so funny about that?
Okay,
What's the
Jared
problem?
is here.
Excuse me. Do you
have your sandwiches cut into 4
Whatever happened
different
to the
separate
spicy Jared? Is that
pieces
there?
That spicy Jared is still
On
there.
Fridays?
You don't
When you're
like
there?
it because they won't cut it into quadrants
That's
for
right.
you.
Last week he wanted Jamie to have it cut into 6 pieces.
I mean, I'm
One
just
day.
hearing about
3
this.
different
Can
boxes.
I tell you why that is, by the way?
Talk
if
about
you have
over
a
the
sandwich
top.
cut into 6 pieces, obviously you're ridiculing me because you don't understand it. It's like an appetizer. It's like a little appetizer.
Like my sandwich cut into 6 pieces.
Exactly. I have 2
Don't
things
give
to
it
say.
to me without the stickers.
Who's the? Did you pay attention to this?
I did.
Who's the a-hole?
So I think that white lights on a Christmas tree are boring and it interrupts you from tipping the postmaster. I'm skipping ahead to the rest. Thank you very much.
That's actually fairly
To
funny.
moldy chestnuts.
It took you a bit of a
Yeah.
second. Well, this is weird. This guy thinks his car is his sovereign nation where he lives
here
in
we
his
go.
own
Thank you.
time zone.
Thank you.
I mean,
That's right.
His own time zone. Why didn't I think that's a great line?
Yeah,
Yes.
he can have at it, but
Have you
that's
seen
weird.
A Man of No Importance yet?
No, but I meant to watch it this weekend. You're just reminding me I forgot.
We went. It is spectacular. It is.
Oh, no, I'm thinking of the movie. You're thinking of the musical, right?
I'm thinking of the musical.
Oh, God, what's wrong with me?
It's good.
It's
I loved
Speakeasy.
it. Yeah, I loved it.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
it is
isn't
spectacular.
Yeah.
And if you want a
it's tough
small
on the
venue,
Irish Catholics, I would say that.
Well,
yeah.
It's kind of spot on, maybe.
Accurately.
Yeah.
Tough.
It's this incredibly beautiful, and it's
Paul Dagneau's last show for Speakeasy Stage Company.
It is spectacular. It is great from beginning. We're going to have two of the players on Friday, but beyond that, it's just a beautiful and powerful play.
Well, the performers are so talented. And you're in a small place, too, watching, which makes it like, we were about, 8 feet away or something like that.
You just hope they're not going to ask you to participate, as you all know.
Speaking of which, do you know who's back this weekend?
No. Oh, Kiki.
Meow Meow.
Meow Meow.
She's back.
Isn't that where the two of you went and had
the first person
moment?
she has to undo her not brassiere. What was the
bustier?
Her dress.
Her dress.
She came to me first, and I am the only person who did not have the courage to participate in the show.
I loved it.
Totally
It was
freaked out.
hilarious.
Okay, enough of that.
Okay.
What are you doing on the show there?
We're gonna.
She is fat, but I mean,
I know.
her show is spectacular.
Yeah, for people who want to get tickets, it's part of Celebrity
Where is she?
Series. I'm not sure which venue, but it's part of Celebrity Series.
Okay.
So Craig Ferguson, we start with Craig Ferguson.
Oh, wow.
Excellent.
Who's bringing his stand-up to town.
Oh,
of course,
great.
Former host of the Late Late Show, so this should be fun. And then we'll speak with the Coolidge Corner Theater about their Big Screen Classics series.
I love when they do that.
Me too.
Yeah,
and they
that's
have
a great theater.
roster of films. And then this is another great thing to pay attention to this week is there's going to be a giant eyeball on the dome of MIT, and we're going to take you behind why this is happening. And it's a super cool art installation happening this week.
Wait, the place where they disassemble a car and then put it on the roof
Yes,
kind
exactly.
of thing?
Where was that R2D2 once? I remember that.
Fabulous.
Yeah, they do all those neat things at MIT. Big brains over there at MIT,
Really
I should
is,
say.
yeah.
All right, Jared.
Good to
thank
see
you
you,
very
Jared.
much.
All right.
We'll be doing the white lights and the tipping the postman pretty soon because Jim can't give up on these chestnuts.
Callers seem to like it. I don't know if your listeners would call them.
Okay. Thank you for listening to another edition
Thank
of
you.
Boston Public Radio. And to
We're running
everybody
out
who
of time
watched
here.
on the live stream on YouTube, you can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we're going to be live from the Boston Public Library with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu from 1 to 2. She's going to take our questions. Oh,
11 to
oops,
12.
oops, 11 to 12.
Thank you.
Plus the ACLU's Carol Rose, and the guy who used to run Medicare and Medicaid, talking about what could happen under
That is fabulous.
Trump with
Dr.
Medicare
John
and
Berwick.
Medicaid. Plus Shirley Young. Want to thank the crew: Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conlon, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, John the Claw Parker, Bill Piacitelli was on the board today. Thanks to him. Jay Bologna,
Bill.
Patrick Lally for running the YouTube stream. I'm Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browdy.
Thanks for tuning in, and hope you can tune in tomorrow and have a great afternoon.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And The Huntington, presenting The Triumph of Love, Marivu's